What do you think happens to us when we die?
I don't think we die. You only have one fucking life, dude. Do something epic with it. Embrace the suck.
What are your views on the significance of Jesus Christ?
Humans centralize Christ message to control others.
What types of memories cause you shame?
These are the kind of discussions that should happen at the dinner table. But guess what? We're not a nuclear family country anymore. I have a problem with that too.
What is your mission now then?
Destroy centralized medicine. To make sure that it's decentralized when I leave the planet. Your generation has this ungodly belief that technology doesn't have a negative connotation. Well, I'm going to tell you, AI is the most nefarious thing that humanity faces in 2025. These questions get to the essence of really what you want to know.
It's all about the philosophy.
There you go, guys. This is Jesus now saying, be careful, Jack. Be very careful.
That was some interesting timing.
Be very careful.
Yeah. Uncle Jack, welcome back. We've had a very good 2 days worth of conversation. You've imparted a lot of knowledge on us, which we're all very grateful for. And today I want to continue that, but this time asking you hopefully some original questions to really get to know you a little better and how you think and how you see the world. So, first question is, Socrates famously said that the only thing he knows is that he knows nothing at all. And frequently throughout our 2 days of conversation, I've heard you say, I don't think I know. So how do you develop such deep conviction on topics spanning from history all the way to quantum biology? How is it you develop your deep conviction?
That one's actually pretty simple. I would agree with Socrates. We already come out and we don't know. That means that you have to be curious to learn, and then you have to do due diligence. And then one of the other things that I think that I said to you and several of the guys recording, especially at lunch yesterday, I said the truth is an approximation of what we now know, what we were able to do due diligence on. So the depth of how far you're willing to go in the rabbit hole actually determines your conviction.
So is truth always, it's never an absolute then, it's always an ongoing discovery process?
In my opinion, it's just like time. Time is relative. We learned that, as humans literally 125 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I believe the truth is also relative. I don't believe there's any absolute truth. For example, quantum mechanics, since you brought that up in question number one, quantum mechanics in my view is still a theory. Evolution is still a theory. Quantum mechanics has been tested literally millions of times for the last 125 years. It's never failed yet. Therefore, hitherto, moreover, we have to give it its due respect. But I can sit in front of you right now and tell you that if you asked me axiomatic, does quantum mechanics completely explain nature? To the best of our ability to reason today, the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. But do I hold open the possibility that someone in the future will come and show there's a massive hole, kind of like, Einstein did with the perihelion of Mercury. Mm-hmm. For 500 years, we believe Newton was correct. Mm-hmm. Until, a guy who's a patent attorney or patent clerk in Bern said, you know what, I think I've got a thought experiment that could actually blow a hole in this.
Another topic we've talked about a lot is coordination and coherence. And it seems like getting multiple agents, whether these are cells or individuals, to accord themselves to the same time series is necessary for health, right? We talked about
I think coherence.
You said when the clocks are running more slowly in the gut than they are in the mind, there's a pathology there. And we also talked about if people's clocks are disrupted through money printing and things like that, that can create economic pathology. So although you're saying that time is relative, there is some push towards having a non-relative time that helps coordinate these, whether it's an organism or an economy. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, you have to realize there's macroscopic time and microscopic time. So for example, because time is relative, we have a hard time in our brains figuring out what attoseconds or femtoseconds are, but our mitochondria have zero problems doing that. And it turns out that that level of time is actually the quantum time that happens on the inner mitochondrial membrane. But if Robert and I are going to have a meeting at Monarcha to have lunch, we're not going to use atto and femtoseconds because it would be useless for that, and we would decohere.
Right.
We would not be together at the same time. Much like, you know, your cell phone that's sitting next to you right now. I told you it has to work 38 microseconds faster. There's a Garmin relay 100,000 kilometers above your head right now that allows you to go from Zaragoza to the Sheraton Hotel and be accurate. If that's off by a couple of microseconds, here's the interesting part. If it's off by attoseconds or femtoseconds, you're still going to get there.
Right.
That's the relativity that I'm talking about.
Understood.
And the specificity has to be what we're talking about, macro versus, you know, quantum level. And I think that level of abstraction, you know, when you're talking about these things to people who are non-scientists, I think they kind of lose that, you know, ability to see the perception.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, I can go in and out of that because I get when we're making the jump between macro and micro.
So, given that relativism is permeating the fabric of reality, but that's not, we have to get to some type of social consensus on things like time, right? This is the magic of Bitcoin, as we talked about yesterday. It's this totally independent timekeeping device. Also, just standards of measurement in general, right? Kilometers, kilograms, all of these systems of measurement that allow us to establish consensus on interactions with the world. These are necessary for us to coordinate and collaborate.
Yeah, I'd say on the macroscopic level, but it's interesting because we do have, you know, the metric system and then the English system. We're able to navigate that without much difficulty. It seems the smaller we go, when the scale shrinks, a couple of interesting things happen. The electromagnetic force gets stronger and time has to be more precise.
Right.
Which is the reason why the clock in your eye is an optical lattice clock. In other words, it can't fall to man's fallibility, you know, of the way we measure time. An optical lattice clock is an atomic clock, and it uses light to work.
Is this why the heartbeats of small animals are more higher frequency than those of larger animals?
Well, that has a lot to do with Kleber's scaling law. But Kleber's scaling law actually has another interesting facet of time that you might be interested in. The same number of heartbeats that's present in a mouse, small animal, in its life is the same as an elephant.
Same as all animals, basically.
Correct.
Different frequencies.
It's very, very interesting relationship to time. And when people first hear about Kleber's scaling law, they don't realize that it's actually a scaling law really that's about time. And, you know, that goes back to our discussion with Bitcoin that, as I said to you, Bitcoin really is a time machine. And so is our mitochondria, so is the SCN. And when you actually layer these things on top of each other, I guess what your mind should do is try to see the fractal, try to understand the connection. You may not, but I think if you discuss these things, parse them out, you'll begin to understand maybe some of the things I say and the nuance that I come with. Because if you don't understand the nuance, you don't understand the perspective, I can see how, you know, people would say, hey, I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, it's a view rooted in fractality, right?
It really is.
Because also there's, I think it's Zipf's law, where the word that's used, so like the word "the" is the most common word in the English language. The second most common word is used about half as much. The third most common word is used about 1/3 as much. And this law continues. It's not exact, but it's a general pattern. So there's fractals built into everything. Every communication system, and a communication system broadly is almost everything, right? Everything's communicating with everything else in some way.
I have a picture on my computer of 72nd and Broadway, where they have white horses on a carriage, and you could have bought that block for less than $1 million in 1870. Today, if you bought that corner, it would be like $18 billion. And it's just like one of those things when you show people, you know, the time relativity of money, it points out the inflation rate, but I think it also points out our history. When you see like the way people are dressed, the way we did transportation, you know, it brings the point that Robert just brought up before about relativity. You think we're so progressive, but yet 150 years ago, that's how we lived.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you think about from whence we came, you know, with the Neanderthals and how their brains were bigger than ours, and it shrunk, and they shrunk because they used artificial light inside caves and put animal skins on them. And then you think, okay, that was 65,000 years ago, you know, to get to that picture. And, you know, it's very similar to the first question he asked me, like, how do you know? Well, you know because you do due diligence. You go down the holes. You want to find out, why is time such a difficult concept for us? Because it is a difficult concept.
You know, but you never know with finality, is the point, right?
But you also, you know, you ask for a global consensus, you know, when you ask me
Sure.
that. And I would just tell you, I think the global consensus actually happens in small meetings like this, when we're all sitting around talking. Like, for example, our time yesterday spent at Monarca, all four of us, there's a consensus about that time that we spent.
Consensus about the wine.
Well, yeah, and also, like, when we talk about, you know, these issues, and we do it on camera, and other people are now coming into our life, I'm sure your experience of that time, your experience, my experience, his experience, they would be different, but yet the collective, and I'd get a piece of that experience from you, and that would add to my fabric of time. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like a painting where the canvas is white, Robert puts his stuff on it, you put your stuff, I put my stuff, then we look at it and the picture is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But yet, was this true for Robert? Was it true for you? Was it true for me? It is, so then it brings the point that I'm trying to make to you, that the truth is an approximation of what we believe, but when we come collectively together,
Concilians.
right? And I think that's where the consensus comes, because we were all collectively there together, but it would be really cool for you to see another layer of truth that you didn't see when you put your head on the pillow last night.
This is why on Wall Street they say price is truth.
Correct.
It's the most massive synoptic integration of all people's viewpoints.
Correct.
And their self-interest aligned to one number.
You know, and we brought that point up this morning before we started recording, when I mentioned Jim Simons. I think Simons was probably the wisest sage on Wall Street the last 120 years. Why? Because he said price discovery really is a function of psychology. Yeah. And if you think about what you just said, psychology is part of the global electrical network that's on this planet, and that network connects to the hole in the heliosphere, then that links to the black hole in the Milky Way, and that links then to Andromeda, then it links to everything there, and becomes a big decentralized network and fabric. But if you were to zoom out and zoom in, the truth at each level would be an approximation of that. And, you know, I often think about this when I go down this rabbit hole, when people ask me about electromagnetism, because I don't think this is really well known outside of science circles. Just when we talk about light, you realize that light has different power based on the scale. Like, light becomes stronger as the scale shrinks. So let me give you an example. If you read one of the books,
well, this is the inverse square law, right?
Yeah, but if I give you, I gave you one of the books yesterday, that you'll read something in there that will stun you, that the inner mitochondrial membrane has a charge on it, 30 million volts. That's the same charge that you would see in a bolt of lightning. So when you sit here and you hear what I just told you, and you go, let me get this straight. An electric bolt that hits the ground and I've got 3,600 of these in almost every cell, then you begin to go, wow, the power that's really inside us is tremendous.
Wow.
And, when you get, that level of abstraction, when you go down there, it also points out that, God, to have that kind of power inside us, you really have to have some incredible control,
Sure.
Of these forces. How do we do that?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've been talking about. And it turns out time controls the flow of that energy in us. That's where it becomes amazing.
It's fascinating. All right. So asked you about Socrates. I want to ask you about another big figure. Several times throughout our conversation, you've used this phrase, my come to Jesus moment or their come to Jesus moment. What are your views on the significance of Jesus Christ in the scope of human history?
It depends on the perspective. If you ask me my perspective, I think it's probably the first story I told that I had a question. Your perspective, I don't know. I don't know.
What does
you
that
well
mean?
enough.
What do you mean? You told the
Well,
story. What was the question?
I'll tell you actually how it starts for me. My middle name is Jude, and I was named Jude because my mother, when she was pregnant, right before me, she lost a baby, and my mother was an older mother, for her time, and she was devastated by the loss of the baby. So she prayed to St. Jude every day. In Catholicism, St. Jude is the saint of hopeless cases. So my mother sat in Central Park every day and ate a tin of salmon, praying to St. Jude for me. And I was told this story from the time I was 18 months old to 2 years old to 3 years old. And my mother would take me out to Central Park on the bench and show me right where she sat when she prayed to St. Jude. And this was meant to imprint me, to probably Catholicism, Jesus Christ, St. Jude, to have an impact on me. And I thought and heard this story over and over again as a child. And then one day I began to ask some different questions. Like, is all this true? And what was the random walk that made me question that? You probably didn't grow up in New York like I did, but anybody who did knows that we have this Museum of Natural History that's very, very close to Central Park. And I used to go there when I was a poor white kid growing up in the city. My mom would give me $1 and I would be able to follow the rich kids around while the ladies brought them. And I remember walking in to see the T-Rex and the Stegosaurus and the Allosaurus and hear the stories how these were 65 million years old and where they were found. And I was like, this is incongruence to what my mother told me and what I learned in my religious instructions every Wednesday in St. Sebastian's. So as a young child, I said, wait a minute, what story's true? The story on the bench in Central Park or the story in the Museum of Natural History? And the interesting part for me as a young boy, I didn't trust my parents.
So that was the question.
Yes.
Which story is true?
Which story's true?
Yeah.
And, it goes back to your first question to me about Socrates.
Yeah.
Like, I don't accept that anything's true. I think I even mentioned to you casually, day one, that I said I hate everybody equally and then I decide who I like. It sounds crazy when you hear it, but when you grow up in New York City, that's actually a path to survival.
It's a good heuristic.
Well, I mean, think about it. You got 3-card Monte guys on the street. When you grow up in the city, I think it's like a blue straggler star where you can be taken out really fast. So you have to really be street smart. It's very different, I think, than growing up in the suburbs. And I have family members.
In Tennessee, I grew up in the South. Yeah.
Well, I know. I lived in Tennessee for a long time, so I know a lot about Tennessee.
Yeah.
And my kids grew up in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I actually know, and I've said many times to both of my kids, the way I grew up and the way you grew up is so radically different that your worldview has to be different. And I said this to you during our time together, that artificial intelligence has no target, the technology, but our children are our artificial intelligence. And I just told you that my children and my upbringing are radically different. In other words, they're part of me, they're part of their mother, but I'd even tell you the zip code that they grew up in and how they grew up also changes their perspective. So when you ask me a question, about what Jesus Christ is to me. Jesus Christ to me at 2 years old, 4 years old, 6 years old, 12 years old, 18 years old, 30, 60, and 65. You want to know the truth, Robert? If you asked me that at each time of my life, I would have given you a different answer.
Which means
There is no truth.
it sounds like a classical book. When you read a classical book, each time you read it, you get a new interpretation, new nuggets, new perspectives.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Is Christ then a classical mythological figure that's a necessary component of our imagination?
No, I think it's actually a tool of centralization, if you want to know the truth. I believe it's to get us, there you go, guys. You just lost your, kind of thought the wind would catch us at some point. You know what that is?
Sandbags are the thing that you
This
can't bring
this is Jesus now saying, be careful, Jack.
watch out.
Be very careful.
That was some interesting timing.
Be very careful.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, hopefully you guys won't cut this out, because I actually think this is actually,
We don't cut anything out.
I think this is really good, because guess what? This is nature saying, yeah, entangle with the discussion we're having right now. And I would tell you that I believe that
We're good to continue?
that religion is an opiate for the centralized paradigm. It was brought to us for us to control. I think it is cut from the same cloth as government. As I told you day one, that government, if you look at the etymology of the word, it is also
Mind control.
Mind control. And I don't think there's any question that that's the case in religion. Now, each one of our religions, it's very interesting, they all have commonalities. Those commonalities usually come back to light, which I find very interesting. But I think when you read a book and you get new knowledge, I would actually pose the question to like everybody that's here right now, everybody listening to this. When you read a book and you go back and you have more informed eyes, don't you think you learn more from the book? And it should stun you that a book can continually give you new information if you reread it multiple times. I mean, I can tell you, I've told my members to read Safedean's book or Jason Lowry's book, and I think Jason Lowry's book is probably the best idea. Now that we're coming into game theory with nation state adoption and software is, I think you're going to see totally different aspects of his thesis laid out.
Yeah.
I think when I go back and read some of my own blogs, I know what my intent was when I read it or I wrote it. But when I go back and read them now, sometimes I'm a little bit stunned. I'm like, wow, I had insights there that I put in the words and I didn't realize that they were there, but they were there.
Yeah. No, and this gets to the whole idea of meaning being a co-creative process, right? It's not just the intention that you put into the words that you write, but it's also the intention of the interpreter.
Correct.
And you can be the same interpreter at different times, having different interpretations of your own writing.
Yeah.
Even. So yeah, meaning is very complex and emergent everywhere. What do you think we can learn and seek to imitate from Satoshi Nakamoto?
Go against the grain. When the grain is set, your duty is to do something different. Also pay attention to your surroundings. I firmly believe that Satoshi was a man of the times. When you think about some of the things in the emails from the Reddit forums and you read those emails and you see what's happened, I think some of the things going on even now with Roger Ver about the block wars that started in 17 and 18 and his recent, Tucker Carlson thing, I think it's very interesting to see his perspective. And then you listen to people like, who've sparred with him on stage, like Samson Mao, and you go back and have your own, come to Jesus moment about where you things are. I think Satoshi, the most amazing thing, he had to be part engineer, part physicist, because he had an incredible insight to add time stamping to the proof of work mechanism. And doesn't mean he had to be a physicist on the order of Feynman or Einstein, but just how to realize is important. Do I also think there's a twinge of his own fallibility in the white paper, in the bibliography? The answer is yes. I also think that when you do something great, the story that I relayed to you probably 2 days ago about, just think about where we are right now. There is people that planted these trees that we're sitting under,
Sure.
and you and I are imbibing these biophotons. That person did something for us so that we could have this moment here together. I think Satoshi did the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and when you think about that gift, it's the gift that keeps on giving. You know, we joke that, yeah, that gift is herpes, but in that sense.
Who jokes that?
Well, I say that all the time, that, you know, it's the
Oh.
gift that keeps on giving, because it's a
Oh.
virus that actually changes humanity. You know, people don't realize that. That's what viruses are. And I would say Bitcoin's a virus.
I've heard Bitcoin is the mind virus, but I've never heard the direct comparison to herpes.
Yeah.
I feel like that's probably bad PR for Bitcoin.
Well, it might be, but I kind of want people to know that, you know, the human genome is actually made out of 98% of herd viruses that we collected, and our neighbors, I'm talking about our evolutionary neighbors, chimps and gorillas, that we've scratched the surface on in our 3 days together. They have a leaky gut by design, and this ties to our story. Here's a tangent you may enjoy. Guy who won the Nobel Prize in '95 named Barry Marshall. When I was a young resident, we used to do operations called vagotomies for ulcers. Turned out that was complete pseudoscience, you know, kind of like barbarism, where you would bleed somebody.
Yeah.
This happened in my life, and what did Barry Marshall do? He tried to use monkeys and gorillas to mimic what the experiment would be on us, and he realized he couldn't do that because we don't have the same guts as gorillas and primates. So what did he do? He drank the Helicobacter himself and scoped himself, actually put the hose down his own throat, and did the test on himself to prove that this physically happened. And the reason why this is important, you have to understand the difference between chimp and gorilla guts and how our gut is different, but yet they're the same, and understand how that changed. And it turns out it's a virus that actually was the small butterfly effect that actually facilitated the change. And I would say that Satoshi's and herpes do have a lot in common when you look at it from that perspective, but I don't think people really think about it.
It's not going to make it on a t-shirt, I don't think.
Yeah, no, it probably won't, but I think it's a good thing to think about, because what I'm trying to say is that small little stimuli can lead to massive amplification. I do think that
back to the butterfly effect, right? Small changes in initial conditions.
That's what an asymmetric bet is.
What did you say about 98% of the genome is viruses?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Per viruses. That's what our genome is.
So viruses that have been conquered previously become part of the
we've
genome?
collected over the millennia.
We've collected them. What does that mean?
We are.
We assimilate the virus?
Yes, we assimilate. Exactly.
And then we become
something
resilient
new.
to that virus?
Think about that in the aspect that we talked about AI. And then I want you to think about the first question you asked me, how do we connect to the whole? The whole is in us. We are pieces and parts.
We are
viral marketing, my friend.
Microcosmic reflection of the fractal.
And guess what? The environment sculpts us.
Right.
The environment
and
they're
we
in.
sculpt the environment in a reciprocal fashion.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is a bidirectional, black box radiator that never stops.
Yeah, right. The only thing that never changes is change itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's that case, and I think the funny thing is the changes that have been induced on Bitcoin, in the 12, 13, 14 years.
Let's
think about how that's changed things.
Let's talk about something then, because this is, I think, a very interesting point. You've talked a lot about the importance of timing. So I want to ask you about Satoshi's sense of timing, the way he released Bitcoin into the world, when he released Bitcoin into the world. He not only had to be a physicist and engineer, but he also had to be a game theoretician of the highest caliber. And what is it about timing? What can we seek to imitate from Satoshi in terms of his sense of timing?
You've been in my house for 3 days. You see that statue on the wall back there. You jump without wings. That's what Satoshi did. And what was the impetus for him to do it? I personally think he knew about 71. He knew about what was happening in technology. He knew about the great financial crisis. He saw what happened in TARP. He knows how the Guardians were inside the gate. And what did he have to do? I have potentially an availability to give humanity a solution to the current state of problems. Doesn't mean that it's not going to need to evolve over time, but this might be a good idea that's worth spreading.
Yeah.
So I think the white paper comes at the right time for humanity. The key is the people who are in control of the centralized paradigm were not ready. How do we know they weren't ready? They didn't strangle it in the crib.
Yeah.
And they made a classic era. And I believe that Satoshi knew that he thought their hubris could be used against them.
It was a blind spot.
Correct.
Yeah. And did that successfully.
Oh, I think very successfully. But the other part of his plan was to step back. Now, I told you, over the 3 days who I believe Len Sassaman is Satoshi and why he's Satoshi. I also believe that there is a hero story there, that he was taken out by the forces, the same forces that are trying to strangle our financial system, the same forces that were behind killing presidents, the same forces that use humanity as human shields, especially Americans, and the same forces that are actually trying to really truly imprint mind control on all of us. Like, all of these things are connected.
Right.
Many Bitcoiners, many people who are not no-coiners even probably listen to this and go, man, that's not my worldview. And I'm going to tell everybody listening to this, I'm okay with that. What I want you to do, I want to share the idea with you, let you stew in the tomatoes for a while, go down some of these rabbit holes, and then maybe come down and see me at a future Bitcoin conference, say, let's talk about it.
Let's go back to this philosophical view you laid out, where we are reconstructing the world, and then the world in turn reconstructs us, and it's this ongoing dance. What happens in that reciprocally reconstructive process when you introduce something like 21 million Bitcoin that does not change? Like an absolute, Bitcoin changes around the edges, right? But the fundamental criteria of only private keys spend, no counterfeiting, fixed supply 21 million, these things don't change. How can we understand the philosophical implications of introducing an absolute into this relativistic world?
I think when you understand what money is, which is really the basis of your show, you understand that a ledger has to be immutable for it to be accurate. That is decidedly different than what you're asking me about nature. Like, this is the crazy part. This is the incongruity of Bitcoin. It's a decentralized manufactured network, but it does not have applicability to the way we operate, but it's still decentralized.
But there is an immutability to the moment, right? Like, once something has happened in history, whether we tell a different story or not, it's a different story.
Well,
but what actually happened,
but
the fact.
you can't do that in Bitcoin. That's the interesting part, but you can in humanity, which is why I brought up to you the last 2 or 3 days, and you pushed back a little bit on it, that I have a big belief that AI is one of the worst things that we will unleash on the planet. The reason why is because it gives unlimited ability to whitewash history. In other words, that will not happen with Bitcoin, because the blockchain will always be the blockchain.
Immutable history.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that we need something like that for the history of humanity, because one of the things that I really, truly hate about human history is that it's been, corrupted by the victors.
Written by the victors.
And we never get the true story. So, when you first met me and you said, Jack, you really go back every September 30th, December 15th, and really become a pain in the ass to yourself about your own beliefs, Robert, I think it's mandatory that you do that because of this issue. And I will tell you, being a doctor, I know that much of what I've been taught is wrong. So what kind of doctor could I be for, say, you or the camera guys, if I was not willing to be that hardcore.
You're being Socratic, right? You're going back and saying, these are the things I think I know, but why do I think I still know them?
Correct.
And resubstantiating your philosophical anchoring points to the world.
Every time a new paper comes out, guess what? I'm looking at the question you asked me, Jack, how does adding 21 million Bitcoin into the situation change that? That is a discussion that happens in my head. But remember, my brain has been built through my 6 decades of experience that I've gone through.
Yeah.
And I have filtered through what I think is important and what's not important. I think the thing that makes me successful in doing what I do, I'm very, very good about subtracting the superfluous.
Okay.
That I have a term called via negativa.
Yeah, sure.
If you remove the superfluous, guess what? It brings that what is most important to the surface.
Sure.
Doesn't mean you're infallible. It just means that you become more certain than other people would be about certain topics.
This is empiricism, basically, right? It's like, you disprove the theses that can be disproved, and whatever remains is empirical.
Correct.
Provisional truth, basically.
Correct.
So Bitcoin, if we're looking at the world through your fractal view, right, that things as above, so below, things are self-similar, the geometry of nature, however you want to describe fractals, what happens in an evolving fractal pattern when you introduce that immutable absolute thing that repatterns the whole fractal, I guess? And that's why we're struggling to understand Bitcoin and its implications so much?
Yeah, I think actually it's going to affect each part of life differently. The place that I will tell you in 2024, the idea that I had in January, because we're now the end of December, I wanted to get the point across that health and wealth are fundamentally linked. I think I did that best this year on the stage in Portugal, and I think I did it on the stage in Prague. And I tried to be agent provocateur to use 3 heroes, and I wanted to tear the heroes down because I wanted the masses to begin to tear some of their sacred cows down as well. And I think once you understand that Bitcoin will affect everything in our life, I don't think, Robert, we can know how it's going to affect everything. And I think the interesting thing is, you're 39 and I'm past 60. How is it going to affect a boomer versus, your generation? How will Junseth or American Hodl view the same question? Isn't this back to question number 1 about the relativity of time? I'd say the relativity of life, the relativity of the situation, the relativity of the environment. I mean, you and I talked about, hey, let's change our environment from Miami to El Salvador and see how it goes. I shared the story with you about my buddy Sam, who's not here, but how he had such a massive change in, his insomnia. The question is, that single maneuver, if you think about that like Bitcoin, do you not think that him being able to sleep has a massive effect on him? And guess what? The reason he was able to come to El Salvador and do this is because Bitcoin provided him the ability to improve this situation. Not everybody in the world that's going to listen to our podcast has the ability to pick up and move their life to a place like this, which offers the mana for the mitochondria.
But Bitcoin gives you more of that power.
Right. And that's the sovereignty.
Yeah.
That's the time sovereignty. And I think it allows us to point that power to where we need it.
Yeah. We talked yesterday about, so all these mitochondria are engines. I think you called them nano
quantum torque engines.
Quantum torque engines. And so the purpose of an engine is to convert one form of energy into another form of energy.
Transformation.
And there's exhaust, right, which is entropy, basically. Is Bitcoin something like a global mitochondria for the global economy? It's
yes, it is.
So is that what the world starts to act like one cell, one cohesive cell, because we have this global mitochondria?
Well, I would say, I want you to think about it like this, because there's a very interesting idea that you could develop here. Do you think the experience of Bitcoin as a mitochondria in El Salvador is different than it is in the United States? Remember, it's legal tender here.
It's different to every person.
Right. So remember, isn't this the story that I told you about zip code versus genetic code? What's more important? My centralized medicine wants you to force feed you the idea that genetic code matters more than anything else, when reality says it's actually zip code matters more, because that's what changes your genetic code.
Yeah.
So I would tell you the same thing I think is true with Bitcoin. I think
so epigenetics trump genetics.
all the time, bro.
Okay.
All the time. And that is one of the big differences between decentralized medicine and centralized medicine. And if that offends people, good, then I'm doing my job and I'm doing it well. But I would tell you, I think Bitcoin offends Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, JP Morgan Chase, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and that's also a good thing. Why? They need to be offended.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening in DC right now, they have decided, okay, let's co-opt Bitcoin because now maybe it can help us, because we've put our ability to defend ourselves in such a bad way that maybe we can get more pavement for the fiat instrument that we've used. And will they try to do different things? The interesting thing, I think about my friend Max Kaiser. Max says you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you.
That's exactly what we're saying here.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that
It's an absolute effect on a relative system.
It's the scalpel to the skin.
Yeah.
But remember, how the patient moves determines the scar the patient gets. And that's how I need you to think about it and realize this is also like our guys here filming us. They change a knob, that changes the effect that the audience sees.
Right.
And we need to be mindful of that in Bitcoin. When Larry Fink buys, say, a lot more ETFs, how does that affect Bitcoin self-custody? How does that affect what's going to happen at Custodia Bank? How is Caitlin Long's tweets going to change? What's going to happen when Operation Choke Point 1.0 and 2.0? These are all, Bitcoin is still immutable, but these are buttons on the equalizer that will change the experience of Robert Breedlove in Miami, Jack Kruse in El Salvador. And,
So we control how it emerges into the world,
Yes.
even if its core doesn't change.
I think the way you're going to use it and the way I'm going to use it are different. And I think when we have meetings
And
like
the way
this,
we're each going to use it for ourselves is going to be different on different days at different times.
and that's, to be honest with you, that's exactly why Bitcoin's like mitochondria. Because guess what? Decentralized medicine teaches you that health is an N=1 game.
Positive sum.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah, and money is the ultimate multi-purpose tool, so it stands to reason. It's going to serve the widest variety of purposes you can bring to bear. If you had a genie in a lamp and you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
First wish is I'd like to sit down and have dinner at Monarca with
You had your wish granted yesterday. Well, it was lunch, not dinner.
lunch, but I'd like to have it with Feynman, Einstein, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo. And I would like to be able to pick their minds about how they think.
Wasn't Gilbert Lane, is it Ling?
Ling.
Wasn't he in your top scientists too?
He was.
He's not getting invited to dinner?
No, I wouldn't mind having him in there, but I'm going to probably say something that's arrogant and ignorant. I think I know what Gilbert would say.
Oh, okay.
In other words, I've done a deep dive. Gilbert isn't as deep as the other guys that I mentioned. Gilbert was adamant. He was a madman. And when I mean madman, he was angry at the people that co-opted science. I think I carry Gilbert's anger inside, and I use that as a tool. I have an absolute reverence for his work.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the most brilliant thinkers in the last 120 years. But do I understand thermodynamically where he would fall?
Yeah.
What I'm telling you is I don't know thermodynamically where the other 4 gentlemen would fall, and I'd be very interested to understand how their brains work and then compare notes to how I think mine works.
Isn't it funny how we really do thrive on swimming in the entropy even though we're fighting the entropy, we also crave the entropy. Like
Oh,
you want all the
I can tell you,
uncertainty in
dude,
that
I
conversation.
love chaos.
Yeah, a party even. Having a party later at the house. It's
Right.
a nice dose of entropy.
Right. Well, I mean, it's one of those things that I look at it like this. You know, some people look at going to the gym and getting a great looking body to look like Michelangelo's David. And then other people look at it, I'd like to have a brain that functions like the 4 guys that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And I want to know what it was to shape them. I have my own worldview of what I've done to shape my brain, but I am looking how to sculpt it in ways to see and tap the unconscious, the things that I know exist, but I'm not quite sure of yet, that I don't have a perception of yet. See, I look at wisdom is the things that we can see in the environment around us. What I'm interested in is being able to see beyond and make it concrete and make it understandable. I want to tap, and the way I'll give you an analogy for you to think this. I have a Tiffany vase in my room, and I often have the vision when I want to think at night, I envision Chantel breaking that thing and me killing her, but then I look at all the pieces in my mind on the ground, and there's 100,000, and I think, how many pieces do I need to recapitulate to know that this is a beautiful iridescent vase from Tiffany? And then I think to myself, how many things are in the cosmos right now out there? Is this the reason why we can't solve Parkinson's disease? Is this the reason why we can't solve GBM? Like, how could I tap this mind experiment with this Tiffany vase to save Kurt Cobain, to save Amy Winehouse, to help some of Rick Rubin's people? How can I do this to actually point out to Sergey Brin why he's a true asshole and sociopath? How can I do something to help humanity? Why? Because I believe there's a redeeming quality in every person that's out there, no matter how evil they are. Like I've told people, I think Elizabeth Warren and Nancy Pelosi are some of the most evil politicians. I would have no problems putting IVs in them and pushing the drugs to put them out of their sleep. But do I think they're actually redeemable? Yes, but they have to take the first couple of steps to seek the redemption. And if they did that, if they actually came out and gave a mea culpa, kind of like we're talking about with COVID, if Fauci came out and said, look, I fucked up, I think I could have more sympathy and empathy for him than I do right now. Because what are they doing now? They're double, triple, and quadrupling down, saying, you know, SV40 can't hurt you. I just read a tweet this morning from Paul Offit. Said, oh, these people are ridiculous. That, yeah, there's DNA everywhere. We eat DNA. Anybody who knows science knows that equivalence, that's a false equivalence.
Right.
These are the people, when you hear that, this makes me angry. These are the people that we need to guillotine.
Have you ever wanted to live in an off-grid community with complete food, energy, and water independence? If so, then you need to check out the farm at Okefenokee. The farm is a pioneering community designed to foster longevity and well-being, eliminating elements that detract from these goals. At the farm, the convergence of nature, nutritious food, a supportive community, and the ethos of slowing down is unparalleled. Positioned at the gateway to the UNESCO World Heritage-nominated Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, the farm at Okefenokee stands as a testament to a lifestyle that truly nurtures health and happiness. Unlike conventional housing developments where a token communal garden may suffice, the farm itself is the community. Small, intimate micro-villages seamlessly integrate into the fabric of a sprawling agricultural community. So if you're interested in joining this off-grid community, then go to okefarm.com today to learn more about becoming a member. Make sure to tell them that I sent you for a $21,000 discount on their custom cabin pricing. Again, go to okefarm.com to learn more about joining this revolutionary regenerative agriculture community. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com.
Okay. There's a saying that every observation of the world is at the same time a confession of character. What is it? You said you think you might be carrying this anger of Gilbert Ling inside you.
There's no question.
So what is it about, what is that saying about your character that this is your orientation towards the world?
I think it occurred when I came into medicine and took that oath to do no harm. When you realize as a doctor that you actually are doing harm and you didn't realize it, that is a fuse that's different for every doctor. But what it does to you physically causes a phase transition in the way you think, your brain, your body, your reaction. And you have to act on it. If you don't act on it, in my opinion, you're perfect for the centralized paradigm.
So this is a fundamental schism in integrity, ultimately,
Correct.
right? Because that's the first, is it the first vow of the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm?
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize that you're engaged in
Some people just take
institutionalized
the
practice
oath.
of harm
Some
making.
people just take the oath kind of like they get married. You know, they don't
Sure,
really
sure.
look at it as a big deal. But to me, this is kind of like that sacred blood oath that you make between you and a patient.
Yeah,
And you go into this altruistically, but you also realize, especially after you come out of residency, that you can't help everybody.
sure.
But here's the thing, even like I told you the story about Mark Peters, I knew that I couldn't save his life, but I knew I could reserve some of his time.
Yeah,
And what did I do? I gave him a small piece of the carrot cake that he wanted. So do I look at that as a small clinical win? The answer is yes. Now, the flip side of that is somebody comes into me as a squirrel and says, yeah, I'd like to have a 5-level fusion on my back and be able to go back and, do gymnastics. I mean, that's just a take that doesn't happen. It's like
Right.
the thermodynamics of dropping an egg. You say, make me the eggshell,
right.
proper again. That is not
Irreversibility.
right.
of
That's
entropy,
that's not a person that I feel bad about.
yeah.
But what we're talking about, if I have a duty to you, then I'm going to give you my best. If I don't give you my best, then I failed you. And there can be nobody between us
Right.
during this transaction.
Got it. Okay. Sounds very spiritual in scope. It's been said that every man dies 2 deaths, one when he draws his last breath, one when his name is last spoken. What do you think happens to us when we die, both literally and figuratively?
I don't think we die.
You don't
I
think
think all our atoms are being recycled right all around us. I think it's the craziest thing is when you go to a death and you hear a eulogy. People should get up and say, this person's not dead. They're just in a more random form. When you come and sit under this tree, I'm sampling right now some of Einstein's atoms. In fact, that's the reason why I'd like to sit down to Monarch and have lunch with them. But to do that, I need a lot more of those atoms to come into a physical body so that all those atoms can communicate, and then I could extract the light and information from those atoms. But no, I actually do not believe in death. There is no heat death. Everything is constantly recycled in the universe. That's actually the basis of decentralization.
So we're back to vitalism.
You got it.
It's all alive.
Everything is alive.
So then the life feeding on life pattern,
It's a beautiful thing.
but it's not, it's the life feeding on itself in a way.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how you look at it, but you know, when I see a baby seal in the water in South Africa with a great white shark, that is naturalized, decentralized. When I did the podcast with Callie Means and Danny Jones, that was a great white shark with a baby seal. Did I feel bad for Callie Means? No, I didn't. Why? Because I think that Robert Breedlove, the guys that will be watching this podcast, you have a duty. Remember, I've said to you several times in the last 3 days, if not me, who?
Yeah.
Like when you did your Sailor series, if not you, who was going to pull that out of Sailor? You did it in that moment, and you changed the hearts and minds of many people. They might not have agreed with everything you
I just
did.
pressed record, but yeah, I hear you.
But
yeah.
you understand what I'm saying. If you don't think when you do a podcast that you somehow can change the ether,
Sure.
then I think that you're not.
Of course.
You're a
of course,
fraud.
Of course. Right. Yeah. What types of memories cause you shame? And what is it about them that causes you shame?
It's an interesting question because I'm going through relativity in my head. I think I felt shame when I was younger. I don't think I feel shame now. And the reason why? Because I think I understand the lessons of what was shameful. Back then, I didn't understand the lessons. Like I told you several times in the last 3 days that I embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Like I ride the chaos.
Right.
If you sit down and talk to the people that know me best, you've had an opportunity to sit down with Chantel, she'll tell you that you're not going to meet anybody that fucking loves the chaos like I do. Sometimes I induce chaos in my own life when it needs to be injected. I do it with patients. I do it with my best friends.
Yeah.
And many of them don't understand why, because I believe the exhaust that you get from chaos forms order. And
So it is an overarching love of order that incentivizes you to induce chaos from time to time.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to answer your question because I just thought about it, and I think this is going to be a really tough subject for some people to hear, but it gives you a pretty good insight to just how hardcore I am. I told you a little bit about this story in the car. When my mother was dying, I brought my ex-wife and my daughter in the room. This was the last time I felt shame. And I made an example of my mother for my daughter. And I told my mother to die. I said, every choice that you've made for the last 40 years has brought you to where you are right now, and you're getting ready to jump in to the sausage grinder. But I knew the lesson was for my daughter. Why don't I feel shameful about it now? Because now I understand why I was adamant and held my ground and did this. I think my ex-wife was stunned by it. She had tears in her eyes. It was very emotional for both of them. It wasn't very emotional for me. Why? Because I viewed my mother as any other patient. And I believe that doctors have a duty to their patients to tell them the truth, even when the truth is the most difficult thing in the world. Why? Because the basis of informed consent is there can be nothing between me and you so that harm's not done. Now, the corollary for that is the patient has free will and choice to do what they want. My mother broke that bond, not only between son and mother, but between doctor and patient. She summoned me to the bed to ask me what I would do. And I said, your time is not my time to play with.
This was at the end of, you said 4 years of her walking the path of centralized medicine against your better judgment.
40 years. How about 40 years?
40 years. Okay.
Like, I would tell you the story I told you about my mother earlier in your 40 questions to Uncle Jack, about her sitting in Central Park eating salmon in the sun, cold or not. That's Mama Kruse doing it right. Mama Kruse, the last 40 years, dude, she shit the bed at every maneuver. It's kind of like, you know, I'd love to sit down with, you know, St. Jude right now and say, talk to me about that.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like...
Is it her fault, or was she just buying into what she was propagandized into believing?
Well, I think it's the centralized paradigm.
Yeah.
But, you know, Robert, you also have to realize I'm not a big believer in victimhood.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in, like, your choices are the hinges of destiny.
I agree. Look, I agree.
And I'm just going to tell you, look, you have to call a spade a spade. It doesn't matter if it's your wife, it doesn't matter if it's your mother, it doesn't matter if it's your father, if they're an anchor in your life. And you know they're going to affect. For me, it was my daughter.
Yeah.
My daughter was like 6, 7 years old. I had to teach her a lesson. And the reason the shame is gone from that.
And what was the lesson? The lesson, don't walk that path.
The lesson is you have to bite the hand that feeds. Your mother takes care of you when you are useless. You have to be strong enough to bite the hand that fed you when the truth requires it.
So you mean, when you say bite the hand that feeds, you mean tell her an uncomfortable truth? Okay.
You can't let anybody stay in a comfort
So
zone.
this is a philosophy of radical truth, basically.
Very few people, though, will tell you what it's like.
Yeah, I'm sure that's incredible.
And I will tell you,
Incredibly hard.
the reason where this gets emotional for me is I never thought that the lesson would become important for my daughter as soon as it did. If I didn't do it, let's just say what my daughter had to go through from probably 18 to 20 currently, I would have never gave my daughter that experience. Now, did the cosmos tell me that my payoff would be that soon? No. Was there a similar thing that happened with my son? Yeah, but not as dramatic as what happened with my mother and my daughter. And I told you that I really have a reverence for artificial intelligence that's our kids. I believe that is the target of humanity. Artificial intelligence, Elon Musk style or Sergey Brin style, has no target. Therefore, it's via negative for Uncle Jack.
When you say no target, you mean no ethics?
No, I mean no target.
No purpose.
I think you're probably the ideal person to point this to. Every guest that you have on, whether you do it on camera or not, ask them, tell me what you think the target is of AI. Because guess what, Robert, you're 39, you're gonna live this whole world. I'll be dead. I truly hope that you actually challenge this view, because your generation has this ungodly belief that technology doesn't have a negative connotation. Well, I'm gonna tell you, the number one negative connotation right now, 2024, because this was in Uncle Jack's notebook for this year, challenge AI at every level. AI, right now, if you ask me, is the most nefarious thing that humanity faces in 2025.
And you mean specifically large language models, or just, I mean, AI is a very nebulous
I'm
scope.
talking about closed or open AI. I'm putting both together.
Even open source AI.
Yeah, because, you know, people, you know, will probably not know when we film this, but one of the kids that's involved in San Francisco right now was just killed, found dead in his apartment last night.
Yeah, open AI whistleblower, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to tell you, when you see somebody die, it's kind of like what I said, you know, to some patent attorneys. It's not conspiracy theory if there's a patent.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, if a guy shows up in San Francisco dead because he's a whistleblower in open AI, then you have a duty.
What was he whistleblowing? I didn't get into it.
To be honest with you, I don't think it matters. I think the point that I'm trying to make to you is that when we see stuff like that as humans, that we have to question it.
Yeah.
And that's the point that I'm bringing up to you right now. I do think we need to question it. I think we need to question Elon Musk. Like, someone posted to me this morning that, you know, if you ask Elon Musk AI about Mars and then you ask ChatGPT about it, you get two different versions of reality. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you and I talked about, if you let AI read a book, are you really getting the full flavor of the book? No, I don't think the crib notes that I used as a person in high school are the same as OpenAI now for reading books. And I have a huge problem with that. And, you know, earlier question you asked me, these are rhetorical questions for you to think about. If you use these tools, and I've already told you, when you have new eyes, new wisdom in your own heart, and you reread a book and it's different, what makes you think that AI is not doing the same thing to us?
Sure. Yeah, it's a convenience layer that will distill and condense things.
Think about what you just said, the word convenience.
I know how much baby gets thrown out with the bathwater.
Comfort zone. Guess what? Yeah. What did I tell you about comfort zone? You know, we know as Bitcoiners, you know, especially the maxis, we can make things very uncomfortable. And, you know, you and I had some interesting conversations about, there's a problem with maxis, there's not. I'm like, I agree with what you said. Mm-hmm. But I'm a maxi, and the reason why is because they make us uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think being uncomfortable actually keeps us sharp.
Well, yeah, again, you're surfing that edge between order and chaos.
Yeah.
And so you need to be constantly stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good thing. And I just think that we have to challenge ourselves, you know, in the areas that we're too comfortable. And I think that's part of what my random walk is at the end of every year. Where have I become a little bit too comfortable?
So, speaking of intellectual comfort, I guess at least, I feel very deeply convicted in the concept of private property. I feel like the stronger you make private property, it almost is the, you know, we say Bitcoin fixes this, like that's basically what you're saying, like strong private property fixes this, which is almost every conceivable problem. Not every conceivable problem, but many, many, many problems. In your view, is theft ever justified?
One time. When a woman gives birth to a child, the child is stealing part. The child also stole part of it, the father. That's the only time I think it's justified.
But wasn't that consensually given by mother and father?
Is it always?
Well, not always. I guess there's the edge case of rape.
Mm-hmm.
But,
or incest.
Well, even incest could be consensual.
Right, but it's still, is there theft? Yeah, there's theft of intelligence, there's theft of cells. That's about the only case. I believe self-custody is a Lloydial title. I actually 100% agree with you that property rights should be defended to no end. But I do believe we should welcome theft of bringing AI into the world. I think we stole viral parts to become us. That's another aspect of theft.
So you just said we should welcome ushering AI into the world? I thought you were just saying challenge.
I said the AI, meaning children.
Oh, the children. Okay.
I'm not talking about that.
I'm going to distinguish them with NI because I'm pretty sure children are natural.
Let's put it this way. I guess what I'm trying to say to you, I know that you're pushing back a little bit on this, but this is good because I'm trying to be agent provocateur for you to see where you are in December, how this affects you going forward, because you're going to talk to a lot of people the next 12 months, and you'll probably ask, some of these people some of these questions. You're going to get a lot of different responses to this, responses that'll be different. And in that sense, it'll be very similar to how we built our genome over 6 million years by stealing pieces and parts from everything that became us. And I think it's actually okay. That's the only part where I think theft is okay. I guess I just thought of another part.
So life
is when we sit here and talk. We're stealing from each other. There's going to be some ideas that I get from you or I get from the camera guys.
Yeah, but that's not, okay, let me get more specific then. Private property and the scarce means of production. So ideas are not scarce because for me to give you an idea doesn't deprive me my use of it.
But I'm still going to stop you there. That's not precise. Why? That's why we have IP. Is IP a good or a bad thing?
IP is bullshit.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
In a libertarian view, it's a scam.
Yeah,
basically.
And then I would say, I look at science, like, one of the famous cliches in science that I actually agree with, Einstein sat on the shoulders of Helmholtz and Planck. He actually saw things that neither one of them did.
Of course.
Many people would say that Einstein stole, but is that theft okay? I actually think it's okay.
I mean, what is it? If you copy a single person's work, it's plagiarism. You copy 1,000 people's work, it's research.
Yeah, well, you could, but I guess that's the line between ignorance and fraud again.
Let me get back out of the idea domain, because in a very strict libertarian view, they would say all IP is bullshit. You can't steal an idea. An idea is a pattern. It's not a scarce object, right? For me to sit in this chair deprives you the right of sitting in this chair. We can't both sit in the chair at the same time. Maybe we could. We'd probably break it. But the point is, when I say is theft ever justified, I want to get very specific. Is the violation of private property and the scarce means of production ever justified?
No. I think it's almost axiomatic.
I agree with that. Is that territoriality in us as social organisms being expressed as private property?
I actually think it's one of the limitations of nature. Nature imprints that on us. Animals fight for their territory.
Yeah.
We see it.
Right.
Therefore, if we see it, there's a purpose to it.
Right.
The bull protects his herd.
Yeah.
The fish protect their lair. The bird builds a nest. The eagle protects that nest. That's a warning. Do not come next to my chirping birds that you hear right now. You're too close, Robert Breedlove, to where my children have to be fed. Be mindful. Nature always has the lessons. You know what the key is? Do we see the lessons? Like the writing's on the wall, but not too many people can read.
Right.
When it comes to personal property, there's a line in the sand. Don't cross it.
Yeah, and it does seem, if we could just make that one, there's a lot of unconscious motivations that come out of that, right? People get envious and possessive and all of these things trying to protect private property. It could also be access to mates, right? Which typically the territory is meant to facilitate. And it seems to me like if we could make that unconscious pattern of motivation conscious, that we could start to take private property extremely seriously.
I don't think though
and encode it in all of our political systems. And say, look, the whole point of this political system is to just preserve private property and nothing else.
I don't think from a nature standpoint you're gonna get there, but I do think that Bitcoin actually, probably in your lifetime, I think back end of your life, I think you're gonna see it. I think this is one of the emergent phenomena that will come from hyper-Bitcoinization.
So political systems will mirror Bitcoin.
They will have to, because Bitcoin will change them.
Yes, agreed with that.
Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-key vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which have unilateral control over your keys. Your funds are fully auditable on chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only move or be withdrawn at your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Bitcoin is money, and as the price continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, insurance, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security or accessibility. Schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team to learn more at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably get it. You get that Bitcoin upends everything that state-sponsored schools teach us about money. For those who get the importance of Bitcoin, it is important that we have a smart way to buy and hold Bitcoin. My friends at Coinbits, the oldest Bitcoin-only exchange in the United States, have pioneered the concept of roundups, which converts your spare change into Bitcoin. Simply connect your credit or debit cards, and your usual purchases are rounded up to the nearest dollar, letting you stack sats on every purchase without even thinking about it. Coinbits also provides a terrific self-custody experience. Connect a hardware wallet for automatic withdrawals into cold storage to minimize your risk and stay sovereign over your Bitcoin. My favorite Coinbits feature is Coinbits Plus, which gives you the best exchange rate on Bitcoin. It even gives you real-time feedback on how well you are doing on your savings plan. With Coinbits Plus, power users can save more money to buy even more Bitcoin. All that, plus peer-to-peer cash and Bitcoin payments, target orders, price alerts, and more, means Coinbits can help you do almost anything you need to do with Bitcoin. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove to sign up today. Again, that is coinbits.app/breedlove.
What's the number one thing that makes you lose respect for someone, and why do you think that is?
Trust. Lack of trust. And here's the interesting thing. Trust is also relative. So for example, you can harm the cameraman, but if you didn't harm me, I still trust you. Now, many people think that, trust is a communicative property. If you fuck somebody else, I don't trust you. I don't ascribe to that.
But you can observe, right? If you saw me being tyrannical to one of these guys and beating them over the head,
but it doesn't mean that
I'm would be less likely to trust me.
Yeah, but you would say that, but I'm actually a little bit different. I'm wired differently because of the environment that I was born and raised in. Remember, poor kid with rich people. Remember I told you the story about Theodore Silbert? Mm-hmm. You could easily look back on him and say he's a pretty bad guy, but guess what? He trusted me with this information. And do I have any shame in my heart telling you about who he was? No. Do I know what he was? Yes. If you ask me, I think he was a good man. I think he was a great man. But he was just like us. He was human. He was fallible. We make mistakes. And he didn't understand the mistakes. Did he try to do good things? He didn't ask his grandson, who he gave $1 million,
Yeah.
to dig the Rolls Royce out of the snow. I did that, but guess what? I think he gave me wisdom that his grandson never got.
Let me reframe the question then. If loss of trust is the number one thing that makes you lose respect for someone, what is it that breaches trust for you?
That's also relative. Like, for example, when my daughter told me a lie, I expect that. You know, but say if you told me a lie and said, Jack, we're going to start rolling at 9 o'clock and you showed up at 11, you can go fuck yourself. I'll never trust you again on your timeline. Why? Because it turns out for me, you don't know this about me, but Chantel does. When the case is supposed to start at 7 o'clock and it doesn't, I'm fucking furious. You don't have your instruments there. Why? Because you need to realize there's a patient here, an anesthesiologist here, a doctor here, and I'm ready to perform the task. Okay? This is not like building a fucking car.
Right.
You know, or, you know, cutting, you know, a dead piece of meat in a butcher shop. No, this is
timely collaboration.
Oh, this dude, when it comes to brain surgery, dude,
Yeah.
do not fuck with my process.
Right.
And that's why I said it's relative. You know, there's certain things where it doesn't matter. You know, like yesterday in Monarca, they didn't bring out the bottles of wine right when we wanted to, but that gave us the time to collaborate and talk and actually meet each other.
Yeah.
So guess what? They broke our trust with that, but that was actually a good break of trust. Why? Because it allowed us to interact with each other and find something out. So I think it's relative. And I think my answer is going to be different than yours. And I think everybody who watches this, maybe think about trust in a different way. Maybe they didn't know that there was this even aspect of trust. And I think the way I trust my brother-in-law, the way I trust Chantel, the way I trust my children, the way I trust my mentors, the way I trust Einstein, Feynman, Michelangelo, and Da Vinci also.
Those are your mentors?
Yeah,
Okay.
those are the four dudes, the four horsemen.
Got it.
Like, that's where I draw my power from.
What in your life do you feel most grateful for?
To be born in the time that I was. I was put here right at the right time.
Back to the importance of timing.
Dude, that's
So is that divine intervention? Is that you just adopting?
How about quantum entanglement?
Quantum entanglement? Is it just you adapting to the needs of your time?
Well, let me ask you this question. This is going to be a direct one. You sat down and asked me a question. I told you the story about my mother having a miscarriage and then sitting in Central Park eating a tin of salmon, praying to St. Jude in the sun and in the cold, because this pregnancy started in the summer, went through the winter. I was born in April, so it gives you an idea about what that 9 months was like at 72nd Street and 5th Avenue, which is right where my mom was in the park. You tell me what allowed that. What was the consortium of the cosmos that came together on that park bench? I don't know. But I can tell you this, I think it was quantum entanglement. That I do know, and I think there was many forces at work. And the thing is, did my mother or did I know as a young boy what I was going to do? Did I know the first time I saw the Archaeopteryx or the T-Rex, how important that would be? I remember sitting down with Rick Rubin and Huberman and having that discussion. Did I ever think, you know, I was going to sit down and actually put together a cogent thesis of how Pomsey sculpted man from ape? No, I never thought about that when I was walking around the Museum of Natural History. So
You've just been following the adventure your whole life.
yeah, I mean, you know what it's like? It's like riding the wave. And the wave could be the soliton we talked about. The wave could be an El Zante. The wave could be the wind that's blowing, you know, through our set right now. But do I believe that we have a frequency of vibration that we have a duty to interact with other people, interact with the matter of other people, and try to make them see things that they don't see, to be better than you are, to be better than they are, to let them know that there's more possibilities beyond what they see right in front of their face. That's what genius really is, my friend. Genius is to hit targets that no one even knows that are available.
Yeah, they say talent hits a target nobody else can hit. Genius hits a target nobody else can see.
Right, and that's the reason why I don't value talent. Talent is useless. If you have an idea and you don't execute, I mean, I always think back to my youth about a guy named, Darryl Strawberry, played for New York Mets.
Yeah, of course.
Guy was uber talented, never met his potential. And then I think, about a guy like Brock Purdy for the 49ers right now, drafted as Mr. Irrelevant, and people are saying he's above his pay grade. I would say to you, Brock and Darryl are what they were, but the expectations, the environment that was put on them created probably expectations that they couldn't meet, or in some cases exceeded. I look at, for me, I was a child given to a woman who begged a deity that we don't even know exists, but represented something in her mind, and the forces of nature acted favorably.
Yeah.
So you only have one fucking life, dude. Do something epic with it.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is each one of us have a talent. And I think you need to expand. I think you need to realize that your mission changes. My mission at 5 years old, 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, where it is right now, if you thought that I would be sitting talking to big politicians all over the world about the things that we're talking about, not in a million years, my friend.
Right.
Never. But guess what? Does that detract from the mission where we are now?
Right.
When I sit down and have lunch with Nicole Shanahan a week ago to talk about the things we talk about. Dude, that's the chaos that I love.
What is your mission now then?
My mission now has been the same mission for the last 20 years, to destroy centralized medicine. To make sure that it's decentralized when I leave the planet. If there's any amount of decentralized medicine and centralized medicine, I will consider my initial nudge of the boulder on the hill successful. And what do I want? I want to create an army of savages that continue that mission.
Very humanitarian. What is the meaning of all this? What is the meaning of life? Is this the mission in your life? Is this where you derive the meaning of your life? We talked earlier about how meaning isn't this, you can't just say what you mean, because there's always the problem of interpretation. The meaning's occurring between the speaker and the interpreter. How do you think about meaning, and how do you think about the meaning of life?
The meaning of life is to go back to something we said yesterday that may seem esoteric to you now, but it's the ultimate thing. Light, water, and magnetism. Light is where all the energy and information is. The purpose of life is to become more thermodynamically efficient in every single aspect. We need to continue to harvest, extracting energy and information. When we extract energy, we improve. What is that? The basis of the redox power. The redox power is the net negative force. We need to limit the positive forces. The positive forces are the ones that take away our personal property. It's the ones that give us illness. It's the ones that are the bad ones in history. The dictators.
Very counterintuitive, but yeah.
But it's one of those things that when you get to be an old dog like me, and you've lived a lot of decades and you've seen a lot of different things, and I've thought about this for a long time, the meaning of life for me is thermodynamic. It's actually harvesting. It's the same story I told you about the vase, the Tiffany vase.
Yeah.
I want to harvest as much light and as much information as I can, because I look at energy and information as exactly the same metric.
Right.
I don't believe there's any difference between the two. I fully ascribe to what John Wheeler said. And I believe this is the reason why entropy from Claude Shannon's work and entropy from our thermodynamic friends,
they converge.
You look at the mathematical finding, they look almost exactly the same.
Well,
That's not a mystery. That's actually mathematics whispering in our ears something magical about nature.
Right.
Something that we've actually not realized as humanity yet, and not taken full example of.
So the other side of that coin, though, so you got energy and information on one side, entropy on the other, and as we said, energy and information, one man's junk is another man's treasure kind of thing, right? Entropy, energy and information to one person could be entropy to another and vice versa.
But what am I saying to you? That all the junk is actually part of nature's game, and nature wants you to figure out how to use the junk best.
That's my question. So doesn't it seem like the objective of the game would be to maximize the energy and information we harvest from reality, but then somehow externalize the entropy where we're not putting it on one another?
I actually think you need to assimilate both.
So like a zero-sum game where one guy steals from another, right? His energy is now your entropy, right? Well, you didn't expect to get robbed and he stole from you. But in a positive-sum game, both people can gain energy and information, and the entropy, I don't know, gets externalized or mitigated somehow. So is that the name of the game?
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately, I think, what we'll find out down the road. But I think the game that we have to play is we have to continue to harness the energy, the information, and use the garbage, use the entropy to continue. Why? Because I think in the garbage comes more
fertilizer for growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think about cows and horses. You think about us, we take dumps in toilets, but cows and horses do it on farmland.
Yeah.
And I think, is humanity missing something here?
Right.
And I think if you scale that, kind of like, I guess this is another bad analogy like I used for herpes earlier, but it's apropos, because biologically, I think we make a lot of those mistakes. I think humanity makes a lot of those mistakes. I think, some of the things that you talked about in our time here, like safety and what's going on in Gaza, the entropy of what's going on in there, I actually think has value. And a lot of people, would argue that point, just as I think bringing light to what really happened in 9/11 and knowing the entropy of those 3,500 people, those people haven't died to Jack Kruse. That entropy, that's still in my anger.
It's fueling you.
Yes.
Creative destruction again, and destructive
Joseph
creation.
Schumpeter, you got it.
Well, and it goes the other way, it sounds like. Even in destruction, we can find the
I
seeds
told
of
you, it's a
creation.
black box radio.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. This is what makes physics and the physics of life, the physics of organisms, very, very interesting discussion.
Indeed. What is in your opinion, your greatest accomplishment in life so far?
I don't know. I don't think I've made it yet. Probably, to answer that question right now, on December 14th, the ability to change a mind that was made. That tells me that my brain is a penultimate quantum electromagnetic computer that's capable of the most amazing things in the world.
Was there someone in particular whose mind was made that you changed?
Oh, many. I've affected millions of minds, and I know that.
Yeah.
And I'm just warming up.
Okay.
I'm not done yet.
So you're on the track of the greatest accomplishment.
And you want to know something? If you come to re-examine me on my dying deathbed, I'll give you the same answer. We're never done.
Yeah.
We're always harvesting light for information and energy.
Got it.
And if you don't think you are, you're already dead. You just don't know enough to lay down yet.
Always dynamic, never static. Static in the grave, right? Not even in the grave, I guess.
No, because your atoms,
Start
that's when I have
feeding
to.
a whole nother ecosystem.
I already told Chantel she needs to burn me and put me next to a tree. That way I can keep pissing people off after I'm gone.
Okay. What's the most difficult decision you've ever made? And would you change that decision if you could go back in time?
Yeah, that one's easy for me. Easiest question you've asked me. That would be the decision to go play professional baseball and not be a doctor. That was the biggest mistake I ever made. Chantel argues with me all the time, no, you're wrong, but my mother lied to me. You want to talk about trust? Yeah, my mother bribed me with a car to get me to do that. That's the reason I'm sitting with you right now.
To play baseball or not?
Yeah, to play professional baseball. I was bribed with a car. I was such a dumb kid.
And why was that a mistake to play professional baseball?
That was my passion.
It was not your passion.
That was my
Oh,
passion.
it was your passion.
Yeah,
So why is it a mistake?
Instead, I got stuck doing this shit.
So you're saying
So guess what? You know what? You're here interviewing me about
not playing
Dude,
professional
you're
baseball.
You're here playing Plan B with me.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about. This is Plan B. Uncle Jack thinks Plan A was something different.
Aren't most people living on Plan A, B, C, D?
I don't know. I hope you ask them this question when you interview them, because I guarantee you something. You might get some interesting information.
Well, podcasting was not Plan A for me.
Right.
That's for damn sure. I think Saylor in our earlier interview said he wanted to be a rock star, a fighter pilot, and then ended up being an
I
entrepreneur.
always wanted to be a baseball player, professional, when I grew up.
And why did you fall out of that?
Because unfortunately, I turned out to be smart. And let me tell you something about smarts and intelligence. When you put opportunity in somebody smart in the richest city in the world and you're the poorest, I will tell you that. I remember something Mr. Silbert said to me in that penthouse. He said, those people that have good brains, they are worth their weight in gold. He said, and they should not waste their talents doing something which they love. They should do something to improve humanity. My parents didn't even tell me that. So I blame my mother for the car, but I got a funny feeling it's what Mr. Silbert told me. That when you see something that you never saw in your own family, and you say, you know what? I'm going to try something different. I'm not going to be like them. I'm going to apply these tools that I've been given. See, I believe my mother gave me the brain because she sat out in the cold, she sat out in the sun, and she ate salmon. Like, my mother didn't know anything about quantum mechanics. She didn't know about brain evolution. But let me tell you something. That is the ultimate prescription to building a really good human brain.
And you're saying that answer came to her through prayer.
Well, I'm assuming it's prayer. I actually never asked this, but I'm assuming because I'm walking around with a passport that has Jude as the middle name. I think it's probably a good bet. To me, that's quantum entanglement. That's what ties my story back to nature.
So is nature then the confluence of all these stories? Is quantum entanglement
For me, it is.
a substitute term for the unity of all things?
Yeah, I mean, if you said, is nature God? And you asked me that direct question, you didn't go there, but yeah, I think that's true. For me, it's true. Right now, in the 6th decade of my life, I look at the trees in front of us. I know what's inside those leaves. Those nitride caged with magnesium is creating the gas that you and I need to have this conversation. That's fucking amazing to me. Like, the entropy gas fuels us.
It's our energy.
And the crazy
And
thing
then
is,
vice versa.
right? And the crazy thing is, our entire food source comes, as Rick calls it, the source code in the sky. And I mean, Rick named his son Ra. You know, and Jack Dorsey wore that T-shirt to Bitcoin Miami. Like the people that are around me, the people that I've affected, that virus is in all of us.
And what is that? That's the sacred logos?
That's a good one. I would say, I like the way you term that, the sacred logos. Rick calls it the source code. But I think it goes back to the analogy that I gave you before about the vase. When you asked me, when we talked about the three-legged stool, I told you that light was the most important. And the reason why is because that's where all the energy and information is. And God, evolution told us that, but we don't have the recipe. I believe that my purpose is to search that recipe. So yeah, I do think that is the source code from which all good things come.
All truth comes. Oh, interesting. If you had one message you could broadcast to the entire world, let's try to keep it to billboard length.
Oh, that's easy.
What would that be?
Stop wasting time.
Stop wasting time. That is a very broad advice. What?
You told me you wanted it on a billboard. That's the best advice I would give people.
All right. If you had to dissect it into a pamphlet, what would that say? How do you stop wasting time?
Do the things that matter and not the things that don't. Stop focusing on the superfluous. Time is a Zippo lighter with all your apps on your cell phone on it. What's the single most important thing that you've learned in the last 2 or 3 days? When you sit down and have a conversation with somebody, make it worthwhile. Don't fucking waste the audience's time. These two fucking guys have been working their ass off to get the pictures and the sound, and it just makes me laugh when the wind comes and knocks the light down, or the helicopter flies by. That's actually nature letting both of them know, you ain't trumping me, brother. What did I say to all three of you? Because you're all smiling now. The audience won't see the two guys behind the thing. What did I tell you? It's not the sound, it's not the video, it's the discussion. You didn't believe it. Well, I'm going to tell you what, when people watch this.
Oh, I did not believe it. I just said people like production quality.
But I'm going to tell
do.
you, I hope people, when the comments, they're going to say, no, the substance.
Of course.
That's where the rubber meets the road. That is the mana that we all
That's
crave.
how you got my ass on a fucking airplane and brought me to El Salvador when I hate airplanes and airports. So yeah,
but guess
I'm here
what?
for the substance.
You needed to come. You needed to see it. You know, hopefully at adopting Bitcoin next year, you'll come and you'll do this. I hope you do this with these guys, and you just say to people, sit down. Even if it's Joe Schmo from, Idaho.
Yeah.
Say, and ask these questions. The thing I like about today's session, these questions, I'll give you a visual. Everybody in the audience right now should close their eyes before I say what I'm going to say. I just dipped your towel from the beach in my pool behind, and now you're squeezing the towel out. These questions get to the essence of really what you want to know.
It's all about the philosophy. Don't waste time. That's the message.
Don't waste it.
Don't waste time.
You have one
Don't
fucking
waste it.
life.
Yeah.
Make it epic.
Don't waste
Every single moment you have, embrace the suck.
What do you think the world looks like in 100 years?
Very similar to what it does now, with a bunch of humans that are more confused, that are probably more thermally efficient.
What does that mean? More thermally efficient?
Meaning that they'll better be able
Healthier?
to, meaning no, they're going to be able to use energy better. But I also think that,
Through technology.
yeah, and I think the other thing that will happen is there'll be less people on the planet, and I also think places that are barren wastelands. And for example, instead of going to Mars, I hope Elon Musk's dreams get popped, and what he wants to do in terraforming Mars, we terraform the Sahara Desert or the Gobi Desert. I said, why do we want to go elsewhere when we still haven't mastered our own planet? To me, that's one of the most psychotic ideas that humanity has. Now, do I understand the Vasco da Gama-ness or the Magellan-ness in Musk? Yes. Yeah. But when you understand light, water, and magnetism, it makes no sense to put people life at risk when I told you what I put on the billboards. Stop wasting time.
Right.
You send people up there to die, you've wasted their time.
Wasted a lot of time.
Why don't we do things here? Why don't we build heaven on earth here? Why can't this be nirvana? Why can't, we have what you told me? Why can't we have a bunch of Bitcoiners running around naked going, what's wrong with that?
You heard it here first, guys. Bitcoiner nudist colony right here in El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, I just say, I think the real good thing is I'd like to see us all be able to come together, sit down, even when you don't like people, and say, look, talk to me, Goose.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, what it is, make me like you. What is the redeeming quality in you?
Huh.
And if there's people that you like, then do the flip side. Let me find something about you I don't like.
Right.
In other words, I want you to sharpen everything about you.
Use that term, redeeming quality. This is, even Richard Dawkins has recently said he considers himself to be culturally Christian. I asked you about Christ earlier, but Christ is also referred to as the Redeemer.
Yeah.
Is this part of our latent cultural programming that we do have this?
Well, we are in El Salvador. It's the savior, right?
Exactly.
And if you think about it, it's the only place that Bitcoin's legal tender, therefore hitherto and moreover. I think that's pretty accurate because I think Bukele is actually the light of the world. He's building an ark here and we are animals in his cubicles.
And you mentioned your mentors, and you also mentioned your aspiration to become a mentor for others, right? To carry the torch beyond your life.
Well, that's what surgeon is. In Latin, surgeon means to teach.
Yeah.
So if you think about Jesus, wasn't Jesus a teacher too?
Exactly.
So I would say, is there a part of Jesus in me? Yeah. I think there's a part of Jesus in all of us, but I don't think, we ascribe Jesus to a certain religion.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Jews don't like Jesus, because he's not supposed to be here. It breaks all the rules in the Torah.
Yeah.
But, even Jews, they can't really fight Jesus too much because he wasn't a bad dude.
Even Jews write 2024, the year of our Lord, on their checks, right?
They do.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. I was just struck again how it is patterns of imitation that seem to be the primary means of cultural transmission.
You got it.
And you can rewind that clock on all the shoulders of giants on who we stand, but at the very top of that hierarchy, at least in the West, is Christ.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
Obviously, there's Buddha in the East and there's many figures, right? Muhammad and Islam, but
there is. But I mean, you have to remember, it's still a giant blockchain of humanity.
yeah, that's what it is.
And the virus is running rampant amongst us, and we're taking pieces and parts.
It's the ideas that have people, not people that have ideas.
Exactly correct.
Yeah. Whew. What is your deepest fear, and do you know why?
My deepest fear is that my kids are going to waste their time.
And what would that look like?
I don't know. I'm looking at both of them right now, 30 and 24. I'm worried. They are not like their father at all. They're not very, very laser focused. When I was a young man, I was scary. Why? Because
you're still scary, Jack.
Well, but I still think I have my edge because I believe you should always have a tip of the spear ready for action.
Yeah.
You just don't know where you're going to point the tip of the spear. I look at my kids now and I think maybe I was the one that dulled the spear for them.
Yeah.
Because I made things too easy. So maybe I'm complicit, in that. And maybe I need to sharpen that up,
Before starting the What is Money show, I spent most of my career as a CFO, overseeing internal technology implementations and business acquisitions. Over the next 10 years, it is projected that over 12 million businesses in the US will be sold. If you are an operator running a business generating between $5 and $200 million of revenue, and you're considering selling your business within the next decade, then there is a significant opportunity for you to deploy technology to streamline business processes, reduce operating costs, and enhance the multiple your business ultimately sells for. To this end, I am partnering with the team at Emerge Dynamics, a firm with decades of experience in maximizing the value of privately held small and middle market businesses. Go to emergedynamics.com/breedlove to learn how you can build an attractive, high multiple company that maximizes your return when you fully exit. Again, that's emergedynamics.com/breedlove.
You mentioned earlier that do you think your background as an athlete contributes to your scariness, your intensity, your ferocity?
That's an interesting point. I would say, what built that is actually I think this is growing up as a poor kid in New York in the richest city and then seeing the difference. I actually think it's the value mismatch that was created the fierceness.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I will tell you that even before I met Mr. Silbert, he lit the fuse, but the fuse was already there.
Yeah.
I would tell you, I was always taught that choices are the hinges of destiny and we have free will. And if you apply yourself, you can do anything you want. I
Yeah.
still believe that to this very day. But I believe that the awareness and the laser focus that you apply to a topic is the key. It goes back to the first question you asked me about how can you be so sure you know? Well,
Yeah.
the only way you can be sure you know is that you become as curious as fuck and you go down rabbit holes and go so deep that people just go, wow.
Yeah.
Like you know, what you call due diligence and what I call due diligence, that was formed in Uncle Jack. I'm going to tell you the first probably 8 years of my life. And it was my family. It was really the city. I remember going around the subway system. When I was a little kid, my mother would give me $1. It was 35 cents to get on the subway at that time. I knew the whole subway system. Everywhere in the 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every place I went, what did I notice? The difference in the people. And
Yeah.
how they were different from me and what aspects they were.
So you're internalizing all of that.
Yeah, and I also talked to people. Like when
Yeah.
I was a kid, I'll give you an example. And this is just something that comes up because it gives you a flavor for who I am. Outside of Shea Stadium is where the Mets used to play. Just so you know, my daughter's middle name is Shea. That's how
Okay.
serious I am about this. I had a family of immigrants who came up to see a game, and I would always go to the games and sit in the $1.50 seats because my mother would give me $2. I'd have 50 cents left over, 35 cents for a pretzel and 15 cents for a soda for the 9-inning game. So the family didn't know where to buy the tickets, and they were going to get field box seats, which were $7.50 at that time. And I brought them right over, helped them out and this and that, and then the guy said to me, "We'd like to buy you a ticket." I was stunned. It's one of the few things that happened to me as a kid that made me realize you do something to help someone else, paying it forward,
Yeah.
paying it forward allows you to jump on waves that you'd never get on.
Right. Right. Quantum entanglement once again.
That's what made me fierce. Also, I'm not afraid to sit down and talk to anybody about anything, and there is no bumpers in my bowling alley.
So when you say paying it forward, that we're back to your commitment to radical truth then. That you think you're paying it forward to humanity to the highest extent possible in the pursuit of truth,
I'd love to tell you I'm not altruistic.
which is
No,
allowing you to jump on waves you couldn't get on.
I'm doing it for me.
Of course you're
I
doing
wanna
it for
know-
you, but it can't be just for you,
Well, I
right?
want-
You wouldn't lie to advance your own self-interest.
No, but
That would
I
contradict
want to
your
know.
aim as a scientist.
If you want to know the truth, I have a voracious appetite for the truth.
For the truth, and that's what makes a good scientist, basically.
Yeah, I really like learning new things.
Right. So it is self-interested in that way.
Yeah,
but
it
you
is.
enjoy the process.
I do.
Yeah. Okay. What's something you've dreamed of doing for a really long time, but you haven't done it yet?
I want to take a cruise for 365 days all over the world.
Okay.
And I want to journal. And I want to see all the new things that I learn as I do it.
Cruise on a cruise. Other people on the cruise?
I don't care. I mean, can they come? Yeah, I think it'll be fun. But I want to go to places that I never would have gone and have experiences I would never have.
So what if we put together a 365-day Bitcoiner cruise expedition?
I'd be totally in on that.
Probably
I
raise
will
the
tell
money
you,
for that.
I did a member event for my tribe. When was it? 10 years ago? And it was called the Innovators Cocktail Party. And I said, come as you see yourself in 25 years. And you know who I came as? Captain Jack. And at that time, I used my Bitcoin to buy a 60-foot catamaran. And guess what it was? Going all over the world, you know, in the sun, on the ocean, drinking deuterium depleted water and examining the earth. So I guess I haven't still changed, you know, from the innovator's cocktail ball to right now. Now I just said I'd do a cruise ship. I don't know why I morphed from, you know, a 60-foot catamaran. I think I'd still kind of dig that, but how many people could you take on that with you?
Right. Is taking a human life ever justified?
Oh yeah. This is when you're getting into some interesting discussions with Uncle Jack. Why? Because yeah, I'm one of those guys. I will tell this story. My friends all know this story. My ex-wife, she wasn't my ex-wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. She's not a medicine person at all, although she did work for a dermatologist at this time. She told her girlfriends that I was a plumber because she didn't want them to know that she was dating a neurosurgery resident. So we went to this restaurant in Metairie, Louisiana called the Steak Knife, and I met all of her girlfriends there. And I got a phone call. It wasn't a phone call, it was my beeper at that time. There was no cell phones at that time. That a guy got shot in the head at Charity Hospital in room 4 and I needed to come. And I'm like, fuck, you know, I'm out here meeting these girls for the first time. So I leaned over and told my girlfriend, I said, look, I gotta go. And, you know, I knew that was a bad look.
Yeah.
I knew what she had told the girls, you know. So I went back to the hospital. As soon as I got to the hospital, which wasn't too far away, first thing I did is look at the CT scan, examine the patient. There's a thing that you learn as a neurosurgeon, that gunshot wounds, there's no middle class. You either live or you die. Mm-hmm. And the question is how fast you die. So this bullet traversed the head, went through the ventricles, was a through and through injury. The guy was a Glasgow coma 3, which means, you know, he's pretty much toast. The rule for neurosurgery, if you're below a 6 on the Glasgow coma scale, you're going to die. But, you know, the question is if you're a 3.
6? What is that?
Well, meaning the scale. The scale goes from.
It's a coma scale.
Right. It's a coma scale. So if you're below 6, you're going to die. The question is, how fast does a 6, a 5, a 4, and a 3 die? That's the question. Again, it's a question of time. So when I was in there, the nurses who were in the ER with me, these are the same nurses you heard about in the JFK story. Mm-hmm. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, give me a staple gun and give me a Curlex. And they look at me and they're like, what are you going to do? I said, we're going to staple both sides. You're going to hang IV fluid and open it at 150 cc's an hour. And they all look at me like, why are we doing this? I said, well, he's not going to survive. So basically what I did is hasten the demise. Mm-hmm. I made that choice. Is that something that doctors talk about? Nope. But guess what? Neurosurgeons, we're the one part of the medical specialty that is closest to death. Yeah. There's no other specialty that will come on your camera and say that publicly, but I can, because I know, and I've been around more death and destruction. The girl that's in that house right now, she's wrapped more bodies than anybody you know. Yeah. Why? She was my nurse during these times. Yeah. And the thing is,
but I mean, you're putting him out of his misery.
Well, you know,
I don't know. Is he in misery at that point?
No, you're not in misery because you're in a deep coma.
Okay.
But effectively, what are you then? You're a shell of a body.
Right.
The energy, life force that's in you is likely already gone. It's already entropy. The physical exam, you don't get to a Glasgow coma 3 if the energy's in the right places. Right. You know, that's really what the coma scale is based on.
There's just some basic functions left online.
You know, it's just, you know, it's like an animal whimpering. And, you know, when I tell this story, you know, you would say, yeah, we have no problem putting like a racehorse down that breaks its leg at Belmont. Mm-hmm. But, you know, this story I'm telling you right now may make some of the people in the audience or you guys a little bit squeamish. For me, you can see, for me, it's not an emotional thing at all. Why? But the reason why I'm telling you this is because I'm out meeting the new girls. I get back and the girls ask me, Well, you got back pretty quick. What happened? I said, it was just a burst pipe and I was able to fix it.
Let's reframe the question. Outside of the surgical context where you're maybe accelerating someone's demise that is inevitable, is taking a human life ever justified in a more natural setting? Say someone that's just fully alive and well. Is there some line that they can cross that you taking their life is justified?
Based on my perspective that time is the most valuable asset we have, the answer is no.
So even someone threatening you, your life, your loved ones.
You ask me the question, that doesn't mean my action is going to marry the same way. Remember, justified is a concept that we talk about.
Sure.
But my actions, remember what I told you, I'm a great white shark, brother.
Right. Might not be justified.
And the better question to ask me is, Jack, would you care? The answer is no, I wouldn't. I'll fucking cut you faster than you can imagine.
So,
and I know how to kill people in very, very novel ways.
I'm sure.
But the question you asked me really is more of a conceptual question. If you want to put it in reality terms, you're threatening me, this will be like a baby seal and a great white shark in a tank together. I'm pretty fierce about stuff like that. I look at my life as the ultimate property value.
Of course. That's how life is designed, right? Darwinian self-preservation. What is it? Is there a moral, because again, this starts to sound like moral relativism when we say there is no justification, it's just my survival versus your survival.
I think where this really gets kind of dicey,
because moral relativism is a very dangerous idea.
You didn't bring this up. This makes it a little bit more dicey. Say if we talk about abortion. Is the abortion because I don't want the child because it's the wrong time, versus say a baby being born with a horrible genetic syndrome? How is that different from a gunshot wound in the head? That's an interesting conversation. And I think you'll see, remember the sliding scale, the famous sliding scale you and I have talked about that I posed to Cali Means, ignorance and fraud. Where's the line drawn? What you're asking me right now, because I'm giving you probably the most slippery slope you can imagine. I think when you end a child's life because it's not convenient for you, you are making a very poor decision. But that tells me that you're a poor decision-making person to begin with. Now, if you have a child and it's got multiple genetic abnormalities, and say it comes from a high-risk pregnancy, and you've been to see the OBGYN and you've had placenta previa, you've been admitted to the hospital 9 or 6 or 7 times, and we know the baby is going to be, you know, a genetic monster, and it's not going to survive a couple of weeks. Do I pass a judgment on those people if they make a decision? No. Guess what? That's not my decision to make. Now, if it's my balls in the noose, that may be an interesting question. I haven't had to face that. Now, the beauty of our brain is that we can face these conundrums in our mind,
Right.
and then we can talk about what we would do. But again, remember, Robert, this is where things get interesting. What's in your mind is not what's in reality.
True.
See what I'm saying?
But
So
I
think you need to focus in on more on reality.
Well,
Like if you say
but
in reality,
it's not that simple. It's not that simple, and here's why. Because to the extent that man acts as if a thing is real, then to some extent it is real, right? These are useful fictions. This is money. This is English. This is treating every gun as if it's loaded.
yeah, but everybody can think about this situation right now, and you may have decided in your mind's eye what I would do to act. But guess what? When you are faced with that and you're on the precipice, what you thought you would do may not be what you do.
Sure, of course.
Again, I'm going to tell you,
Right.
it comes down to
That's when your convictions get tested. Your
That's-
integrity gets tested.
that's the key, my friend.
Right. But
And
this,
I put way more value on that
Yeah.
than anything else. Why? Because remember who I am. I am the doctor that deals with life and death
Yeah.
at that edge more than any other specialty out there.
Sure.
And I've seen life taken from children. I've seen life taken from teenagers. I've seen life taken from centenarians.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those is radically different. And then I've also had the very unique opportunity to do something that I think everybody should do. So when I was in medical school, the most beneficial training I ever got is I was forced in my 4th year. Didn't want to do it, be the first one to tell you. This is where part of embracing the suck comes from. Embracing the suck was I had to go to an old age home and sit down and take care of, people, on the back 9, maybe on the 18th hole. And I decided, okay, I'm going to make the best of this. So I started to be agent provocateur, even as a young doctor. I said, tell me, what's your one regret? And I got something I didn't expect. Every single person I asked the question to is the things they didn't do.
Which were?
For everybody, it was different.
Oh, just activities they didn't do.
No, things that they had always set their mind to, I'm going to do it, and they didn't do it. And I thought it was very unusual that all these old people who are totally disconnected all had the same regret.
That they wanted to do more.
Yeah. And then I started to think, what was the essence of that? Like, how did I distill that lesson down? It's why I told you the answer I told you about on the billboard. Don't waste time.
Yeah.
All of them, fundamentally, they wasted time, and that's why they never got and put the tip of the spear in the right place.
Well, fuck, aren't we all doomed to waste time to some extent?
Well,
if our ambitions are limitless.
We do, but
and
guess
we're
what?
Finite.
I mean, some people may say sitting here, you and I and the 2 guys filming us are wasting time too, but at the same time, the exhaust from the ideas that we're putting out here, that exhaust may fuel some of the people out there to do things that stop them from wasting their time.
Sure. Yeah, or even innovating tools that help other people save time, which is the opposite of wasting time, right?
Correct.
So
And saving time and wasting time may be different to a different perspective and a different person.
Yeah, it's all contingent on your purposes and your aims, right? Are you aiming for
Correct.
leisure? You're aiming for productivity? You're aiming for impact? Like, there's all different things we can aim at. I want to try, okay, because it does seem like your metaphysics lends you to believe in some type of moral relativism to some extent. That it is relative to the survival of the individual that's choosing the morality
Everything is
that they
relative.
adopt. However, you also said that private property, it can never be justified, the violation of private property. I think you even said that you consider yourself your own ultimate form of private property, which sounds like a moral absolute. How do you reconcile these two?
I don't.
You don't.
I don't. It's not important too. If you really want to get down to it, we're all part of nature.
So is it might makes right?
I think at the basis, you grew up with the axiom, as I did, it's survival of the fittest. I've rejected that. It's survival of the wisest.
Survival of the wisest.
Yes, the wisest amongst us will actually make the most usefulness of their time.
Okay. So that might makes right? Or you're saying wisdom is might?
I'm not saying that wisdom is might. I'm saying wisdom is also a concept that's relative. The wisdom to avoid the shark fin is not the same as the wisdom to avoid the bullet.
Right.
The wisdom to live in Israel as a Muslim is not the same as the wisdom to live in Idaho to be a snow skier. It's a very, very deep concept. And is this the answer that young Jack Kruse would have given a microscopic Robert Breedlove at another time? This is what you get from Jack Kruse after 6 decades of me soaking in tomatoes.
And it's our wounds that give us our wisdom, as you frequently said.
Yeah, I mean, we
like
develop
photographs, we develop from the negative.
You got it.
So it's through the pain that we acquire this wisdom, and then those who learn the most along the way or accumulate the most wisdom will be the ones
Well, I think
that
the smartest,
others.
I think the
you're
smartest, the wisest are the ones that not only learn their own lessons, but also learn from the lessons of others.
Of course. Much
So-
more cost effective that way.
Well, yeah, but I have to tell you, that's the one thing that humans are not really good at.
Right.
They don't really learn from other people's lessons. I mean, that's part of the reason we have a news cycle in Bitcoin. You know, all of us always say, okay, the newbies are coming in, so
Yeah.
we've got to be ready to answer the wallet questions,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that you want to help them, but, you know, in every aspect we're talking about, whether it's health, medicine, you know, we just had to go through it with Chantel's father. I mean, to be honest with you, they probably don't want this aired on TV, or a video, but I think it's apropos because I think it's really cutting. You know, I look at the angiogram and they were told that this guy needs to have 4-vessel cabbage, and I'm going,
So can you tell us what that is?
well, I mean,
It's a four.
yeah, her dad was
quadruple bypass.
quadruple bypass.
Okay.
He's 83 years old. I'm like, here's my moral relativism. If I'm 83 years old and I have some angina, I'm like, give me nitroglycerin and I'll adjust my lifestyle appropriately. I'll go sit on the top of my roof, but you're not fucking cutting my chest open.
Yeah.
And I don't care if my wife, my kids, and everybody in the world wants me to do it. I don't care if I have the best cardiac surgeon telling me that I'm an idiot. There's no fucking way I'm doing that. And if I go out, I'm cool. I'm going out on my terms. But
Was that the advice you gave Rick? Because he had to go under the knife, right, for open heart surgery.
Rick never asked me that advice. Rick was very smart with me. He asked me very small piece. He had already decided to have the surgery. That wasn't the decision that he posed to me.
Gotcha.
He said, what would you do to optimize this choice?
Gotcha.
That's a different question.
Yeah.
And, you know, the question, you know, here that I have a problem with is I believe that all patients, all people, I believe you have a duty to give them an informed choice.
Yeah.
And you also have to be willing to walk away. Like, why don't I have a big problem, you know, with Chantal's dad making the decision that he made? Because he made it.
Right.
Now, do I think it was a good decision? Probably not.
Right.
But, you know, I've got to filter that a little bit
But
because...
that's not for you to judge.
No, it's not. It's not my job.
Right.
But I see her
Sure.
struggling with it.
Yeah.
And I see her struggling with, you know, how her family was behind this decision and how shall we say influencing and supporting
Yeah.
and making the choice easier because obviously the doctor has all the wisdom. Why? Because they're all centralized. There, you know, there was no discussion given for what is the decentralized side of the coin.
There's an assumption the doctor has the wisdom,
Correct.
but not in fact.
And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that bothers me because I told you, I believe the greatest things can happen whether we're 1 year old or in the last minute of our life.
Yeah.
And I think when you make a decision like this to put your time on the guillotine, boy, I don't want people around me like that.
Right.
You know, when I have to face a decision like that, I would like to hone and sharpen my circle of six around me so that if something happens to me and I'm in a motorcycle accident, I'm incapacitated, that they're not making the choice. I've told them what to do when
Right.
it's appropriate. I counsel my patients every Thanksgiving since I'm an American. We sit down and instead of saying grace, you tell everybody what you want in case you become incapacitated. Why? Because it's not fair to leave that to your
Sure.
family, to your wife, your
Takes
kids.
the emotion out of the decision, right?
Well, not only that, but they're also incentivized.
Right.
They're incentivized.
Right.
Incentives create
Yeah.
outcomes, my
Right.
friend. I mean,
Yeah.
are we back to the same story?
The interface of death and money
Yeah.
generates the strangest of human behaviors.
But you know, people don't think about these things. They don't think that this can happen to them.
Yeah.
That's the wisdom. You asked me this whole question was about wisdom. I think wisdom is the most nebulous
Yeah.
term Because you really try to pin it down,
You can't.
you can't.
Right.
And that's
Can
why I
it-
said wisdom can come from places you can't imagine.
We also said it's useful, cost-effective to learn through the lessons of others rather than having to go through them, the painful experiences yourself. Although we tend to learn more strongly when we go through it ourselves.
Well, ask him.
Does that mean wisdom?
Ask the wisdom he got when I saw his face when he put that foie gras in his mouth.
So
Did
wisdom,
it pay off?
Yeah, new experience, a new way to appreciate something.
can wisdom be communicated by words?
Yes.
It can be. So it
Yes.
can be encoded.
Yes.
So it can be pinned down.
Yeah.
You're saying it's hard to define. It is hard to define. I agree with this.
No, but I think not only can it be encoded, but it also can be implied. It can actually be invisible.
Then isn't there some role for artificial intelligence in synthesizing the wisdom of all these individuals in the world into something we can
No,
all draw upon?
There's not. And the reason why, just think about the logical fallacy that you just made.
Well, you're
AI,
saying,
let me
you're saying
finish.
it can
Let me
be
finish.
encoded.
Let me finish. I want to finish this one because this is really important. Anybody who believes that artificial intelligence, which comes from the human brain, somehow subjugates the human brain, has made a huge logical error. Nothing is more impressive than the human brain. It
Well,
is.
maybe strip out AI then and just say.
I think that's a good one
what I
because
wanna
you're not going to like where
what I
we're
wanna
going to go. I'm
focus
pushing
on
back hard on this one.
is the encoding of wisdom in words.
Well,
if that is possible,
What's
isn't-
the first blockchain to you? First blockchain to me is the Sumerian alphabet that's in a stone. That's the first code. Now there's many others. So are you going to tell me that? Because this-
wouldn't DNA and RNA be even more ancient than that?
Yeah, well, but I'm talking about the ones that humans
Man-made.
used. I'm going to tell you, I think the real first code, light, water, magnetism, my friend. I mean, you really want to take it back? Let's take it back to where we need to go.
Okay.
I mean, this is the full circle. I'm going to tell you, light has everything in it. And guess what water does? Water allows us to understand it. It's the transformer. It lets Apple talk to Microsoft.
Right.
And the code doesn't mean anything until it has meaning. Then you have to find the wisdom in it. And then when you try to pin down wisdom, what's the wisdom in water? What's the wisdom in light? Like, the only way that comes is you need to have an experience with it, and everybody's experience matters, and everybody's experience is different. So there's so many different facets to this.
So what is the wisdom encoded in private property then? Because this is the chasm between that moral relativism and the moral absolute that you said you don't reconcile. But private property sits right there in the middle.
Private property.
So you consider yourself self-owned, but do you
Yeah.
consider other people individually self-owned as well?
Yes. I think,
So that is a moral absolute.
well, yeah, when you're talking about people, but I don't think people and personal property are often thought of in this way.
I agree.
They were thought about that way during slavery or indentured servitude. Like,
No,
how about,
sorry, this is individual self-ownership. This actually precludes the possibility of slavery. Because every individual owns themselves. Even if I sell myself to you in slavery, I
Right.
still retain control over my faculties. So technically, you don't own me. I own you.
I will say that you are the personal property of nature, but nature allows you to run free and make the decisions you make. The decisions that you make are the hinges of destiny, and it's tied to the wisdom. So the personal property aspect of this is the time that you've wasted or spent, however you choose to put the adjective on it. You have used that time to accumulate the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
You should be adjudicated the fruits of those labors that you place value on, and you alone, so that they can have absolute ownership to
Yeah.
you, because without you, they would not exist.
If I could put it to you like this, Uncle Jack, I think the wisdom encoded in private property is that it allows us to stop wasting our time trying to steal from and kill one another, and instead focus our time on doing things that are productive and in service to one another.
I don't have a problem with that, but could I envision, given those thermodynamic givens that we could figure out if we had enough time, that there would be a use case where that would break.
Maybe.
I just can't think of it right now off the top of my head.
The moral, if we slide into moral relativism though, and everyone's just like my truth, your truth, then it's like we're completely fragmented.
No, I agree.
There's total lack of coherence.
Totally agree.
That's utter entropy.
Right.
We must avoid. So we need common points of reference, right?
Yeah.
Common symbolic canopies to organize under. And so that's why I'm like really trying to push this one, because there has to be, even if it's not an actual absolute, even if private property isn't a metaphysical reality, we have to choose something. We have to choose a God to serve, so to speak. And this seems to be the one that maximally serves individual self-interest. It's like, oh, we're going to acknowledge that you're a self-owned person and that the things you work to create, you also own. And then if we all assume that about one another, then we can work and trade and we don't have to kill each other over every sandwich, so to speak.
I think I'm okay with not only the question, the way it's posed, and even the answers that I gave prior to. I believe anything that your time is created, that you have ownership in. But ultimately, I think you are owned by nature.
Sure, of course.
And I believe that you have a duty to plug back in to the source code all the time so that you can keep gaining the wisdom that you need to fully develop the wisdom in which you don't have, to start to hit targets you don't even realize that are there.
The philosophy is in the light.
For me it is.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how many other people will see it this way, because for me, I know this is a how shall we say, a very esoteric subject, but for me, everything exists in light. That's why I told you energy and information are one and the same to me, but we have to pull it out. And my experience dealing with myself and also other humans, that's one of the beautiful things that I think I've taken from other people. I've learned a lot of lessons from other people, and especially in patience and the good and the bad outcomes. But I also can tell you the relationships. The thing that I've also been amazed with, like, I didn't have a huge relationship with Theodore Silbert, but I have to tell you, boy, did he teach me some stuff.
Yeah.
I only met Robert Becker one time, but that meeting that we had, holy smokes. You know, in other words, what does it tell you? That time truly is relative, because you can spend 40 years with the same woman and not get the essence of that meeting with Becker.
Sure.
That's part of the reason why I said to you before, I'd like to go to Monarcha with the 4 horsemen. Why? Because I'd like the chance to extract the juice of the grape and the wisdom that those 4 men pulled out, because they all did it in a different way. And do I believe they did it in ways that I find interesting? And I want to tap on it.
You crossed a bunch of different subjects there. That we had a quote that related to wisdom, which is interchangeable with virtue. Virtue, being virtuous is being wise, right? And it's to do with evolution. I'm really interested just to have your take on it. The patterns of life do not change solely in accord with causative mechanisms or programs or blind operations or physical laws. They do not just change valuelessly. They change in ways that evade, override, and circumvent these laws. The patterns of life are constantly evolving in response to something better than that which these laws of nature have to offer. This would at first seem to contradict one thing that evolutionists insist upon most, that life is not responding to anything but the survival of the fittest in the process of natural selection. But survival of the fittest is one of those catchphrases like mutants or misfits that sounds best when you don't ask precisely what it means. Fittest for what? Fittest for survival. That reduces to survival of the survivors, which doesn't say anything. Survival of the fittest is meaningful only when fittest is equated with best, which is to say quality, excellence, arete, or virtue. Virtue is the purpose of the evolutionary process, is what this guy suggested. I just thought it was interesting. Corresponds with what you were saying, that it's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the wisest.
Yeah, I think we've been lied to because of Dawkins and Darwin's paradigm for the longest time. I think just live your life long enough and you'll realize, you know, if it was survival of the fittest, everybody who's a professional athlete should live the longest, and it turns out they die the soonest. So we got to ask the question, then, forget that idea, erase it. Let's talk about COVID. All the fatties were supposed to die, and turns out now all the fittest guys are dying. Okay, now you're 0 for 2. Here's your third time up in the lineup. Can you hit the curveball again? You got to start asking yourself, what am I missing?
What is fitness? I mean, that's the question, right?
Well,
what does that even mean?
Fitness. You want to know the truth? Fitness is like time. It's relative.
It's relative
That's the point.
to the circumstances.
You got it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could be the fittest fish in the world, but if you're forced to live at the top of the Himalaya mountains, you're going to be dead.
But so time is relative, yet we need a universal notion of it to coordinate as one organism. Do we need one notion of fitness as well?
No. Actually, I think fitness is one of the facets of the diamond that is wisdom.
Okay.
In fact, I would flip it completely around. Just as Einstein flipped Newton around and said, time is not absolute, it's relative, I'm telling you that fitness is also relative for the environment you're in. We're back to that story. Boy, the environment really plays a huge role here.
event.
Yeah.
Back to the KT event.
Exactly. Like, how wise were the dinosaurs when they looked up and saw that?
Right.
Turned out the little mammals
Well, they
underneath the
were
ground were more wise to be there.
Well, the dinosaurs were evolutionarily wise until
They
impact.
weren't. Until they weren't.
Right. And
So the question is, how wise
right.
will people be about money? Like, how wise will they be about technology?
So we need as wide of a possible variety of experiments and strategies being played out in the real world to maximize fitness of the group even.
Well, Robert, I would tell you, it's the reason really why I jumped at the chance to go to Bitcoin Prague, to have the discussion, to be agent provocateur and say, yeah, well, why is it Bitcoiners are really good about showing Hal Finney running in marathons, and yet he's not here among us?
Right.
So what was his problem? Well, we know he's a smart guy. We know he got Bitcoin. We know at one time he was physically fit, but we also know that he abused technology. He was always around it, and he got ALS. Well, how about we talk about that for a while?
When your mind wanders, what do you find yourself thinking about most often?
What I don't know. I need to embrace more of the chaos.
So obviously you can't think about what you don't know. So are you then questioning what you think you do know?
Oh, I do that at a specific time. I
Okay.
question what I don't know all the time by jumping down rabbit holes that I see. So you've probably seen me the last couple of days. I tend to put different music on when I'm doing different things. So I want to embrace the chaos. What do? I put Metallica on. You want to see me? I'm very interesting when I get on a topic. Like, I will do things that will blow your mind. And when I'm trying to quiet the mind, I put on piano music with nothing else on there. And then when I really try to extract more out of a podcast, I'll tell you what I did. I did it to your podcast with Luke. I had that podcast running and I played the piano in the background. Why? Because I felt like I got more flavor of the discussion between you two when it was on. And did I turn the piano off? So what am I telling you? I believe that I can extract more of the energy, the light, and the information when I add or subtract chaos to it. What have I missed? And I went back and listened to the part where you said, well, I'm getting ready to talk to Jack Kruse, and I listened to it about 10 or 15 times. And I listened to what Luke said. And ironically, that's what started our discussion. Why? Because I felt that important, that's where the tip of the needle needed to begin.
Have you ever experienced anything that's actually unexplainable according to your scientific view? Like, have you ever experienced a miracle or anything supernatural?
Yeah, I actually talked about that in the Huberman podcast. I mean, the whole world heard it about the kid that I pronounced brain dead after, he got T-boned in a McDonald's drive-through, and there was French fries all on the ground. At the time this happened, I wasn't where I am right now, and I had no idea how it could be possible that a lady would show up 7 to 10 years later with that kid's heart in her chest and wanted to know why as an athlete that was carnivore and keto, had this incredible desire for French fries her whole life since she got the kid's heart. I had no way, you know, when she showed up, and then what happened in my life. Because I had this experience and I couldn't explain it, what did I do? My mind was open, and then magically 2009, Luc Montagnier publishes a paper, and I go, that's it. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
And that's when all of a
What
sudden...
is that paper?
That paper was about, very interesting. He takes pieces and parts of DNA, puts it in water. They were reconstituted, then they take it apart, took all the DNA out, took the water, looked at the light signal that was in the water, transmitted it over the internet to another country and city, and were able to recapitulate the DNA that used to be in there.
Wow.
And I was like, well, if that's not Star Trek,
Shit.
you know, kind of level shit here,
Yeah.
and the fact that there's a physical capability that's built into all of us that can do that, I said, now I understand why that lady had the ability to have the sense. And, you know, then if you really want to get nefarious here, this is the reason why I think you need to embrace the suck. This story is tied to, you know, Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin with the frazzle drip. Why did they do what they did? They induced this stress in the child. They got joy out of it. So what are you physically doing? They were able to actually change their own emotions by doing this. This is exactly the same story as the French fry and heart story. But the thing is, do you see that? Most people will listen to this and go, whoa, how do you put those two things together? That's survival of the wisest. In other words, don't think that the good thoughts and the good science from one area can't also be used to explain the sociopaths
Sure.
that are among us. You know, and unlike Luke, I like to embrace the chaos. Mm-hmm. I like to see the crazies. Why? Because I think we still learn from the edge cases.
Right.
Like, I think one of the big problems with society is we spend far too much time underneath the bell curve. And I'm going to tell you, I think where my people are, they're in the tail.
Is that the purpose of evil?
Yeah, because without evil, you can never know good. And without good, you can never know evil.
So evil is the entropy that
Just think
good
about
grows from?
Just think about what the judge said about pornography. He goes, well, I'll know pornography when I see it. What did he imply with that answer? I mean, all of us chuckle. But the only way he knows when he sees it is because he's seen good and bad.
Yeah.
And he knows, you know, okay, that's pornographic. Without that perspective, you can't go there, but that's true with everything in life. You know, we don't think about the great white shark biting the face off a seal as being horribly occult, but when Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton do that to a child on a snuff film, okay, it's a different connotation, but is the act exactly the same? The physical act, yeah, but the intention's different. And do we know, like from a guy named Masudo, he's a Japanese guy, can our intentions change water patterns in us? The answer is yeah.
It's The Secret Life of Water book?
Yeah, it's a great book. But, you know, the thing is, you don't realize how these things are playing out.
Right.
You know, in all of us. I mean, I will tell you right now, if we had tears from your eyes or some of the water from your blood, that's 93% water, I guarantee you that emotions in you have changed by the questions that you've asked me. I'm convinced that I know. Remember when you said, Jack, you're really crazy about saying, no, I don't think I know. I know that if I took the water out of your blood, when you asked me the certain questions and you had different emotions in you, we could have matched your emotions if you told the truth by looking at the water in there.
Is that why sweat smells differently depending on the emotional state you're in?
Absolutely.
Sweat is different,
Yeah.
so energized sweat.
And that's also, if you want to know if you had good sex, smell the sweat. Smell the sweat of the person that you're with. Some people think, oh, that's gross. And if they think that's gross, you're with the wrong person.
It's definitely not gross.
Right. But that's when but the point is, there's going to be people that listen to this podcast and they go, you know, I can just imagine them saying, I never thought about it like that. Well, guess what? Get off your ass and start thinking about
The
it.
nose knows.
Right.
Name one truth you've learned about human nature in all of your years of wisdom.
They are 100% fallible.
100% fallible,
They are not to be trusted.
meaning we always miss the mark?
No, but you always have to question everything.
Always question everything.
It's on my phone.
So
It's my screensaver on the phone.
So don't trust, verify.
Now
Yet-
you understand why it was easy for me to find Bitcoin?
But we still need to trust sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
So how
You
do
need to trust me. If I'm going to open up your coconut, you're going to have to trust me before we do it. But even then, when I'm there, you should have a shadow of a doubt.
Well, I mean, you have to trust me to let me in your home and record with you, right? So I'm saying, like, how do you...
Well, I don't have to trust you that much. Chantel will kill you if you do anything wrong.
If people are 100% fallible, can never be trusted, but we have to trust them.
Uh-huh.
How do we reconcile those two
Well,
situations?
it's easy. That's what humanity is. We have to trust each other at some basic level. So it's kind of like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. I'm 99% sure that I can trust you in my house. So it's like anything else. Is it cause and effect? The answer is no.
Is this where faith, the idea, the concept?
Nah, you can go there if you want. I'm not going to go. I'm going to tell you I'm back to my Cali mean sliding scale. Ignorance and fraud. Like, where's the line? We make that determination amongst each other.
Well, then it's willing ignorance. Because
Yeah.
even if you're 99% trustworthy,
Right.
there's 1%
That's
not
you're
trustworthy.
ignorant of the
and
fact.
you're choosing to 100% allow me into your house.
Correct.
So you're choosing 1% fraud? Or is that ignorance? I'm confused now.
Well, it could be. It could
Ignorance
be,
of my intention.
right. It could be ignorance of your intention, or you could be fraudulent. It could be either side. Because I don't know where the 1% is coming from.
Right.
But have I increased my probabilities? Yeah, you had to go through 3 guard gates.
Sure.
So even if you do something, the chance of you getting out of here, not so great.
Right. So
See what I'm saying?
You align the incentives. Yeah, of course. And that's something Bitcoiners in general deeply appreciate with.
This for me, that's why I said
This
me
is-
coming to Bitcoin was, kind of like putting a surfboard in
Yeah.
in El Zante. Not really a hard slide.
So you're always looking, and accurately so, any human being is a potential enemy or potential threat at any moment.
What did I tell you yesterday? I hate everybody equally until I determine
Right.
that I like you. And that is decidedly different than most other people will tell you. But that's
Yeah.
a consequence of me growing up where I grew up in New York City, because that was survival of the wisest.
Right.
But that's not what it was for you in Tennessee. But that's okay. You came to the same
Well,
decision.
I don't know that you could say that. You can't say it's not survival of the wisest anywhere. If that's the primary evolutionary imperative, then it's survival of the wisest everywhere, right? The dinosaurs were wise until the meteor hit.
Right.
Then the underground rodents were wise.
But you're assuming that the person has the perception of that and believes it and lives it. That's where you're making the
no,
mistake.
yeah, I don't think people necessarily buy into that.
And that's the point that I'm trying to make to you, that you have to parse that out.
But as you said earlier, wisdom's a really hard word to pin down. Maybe
It
this
is.
is just another substitute word for God.
It is.
People are having faith in
And
wisdom.
that's what he just said. He goes, what about faith?
Yeah.
And what did I say to him right away? Now, you can go there, but I want to be a little bit more scientific about it.
Well, but
meant that
no,
faith
faith
is
is an act. It's an act of trust in the unknown.
Yeah.
That we can't know
Right.
what's beyond the horizon of entropy.
Right.
Yet we still have to act.
And what did I tell you is my modus operandi about the vase? I want to know the unknown.
Yeah.
I'm always curious.
Right.
Guess what? The real answer here is being curious and questioning everything. I've told many podcasters this, and I don't think they believe me. The last one that I think really does believe me is when Dr. Alexis was down here, Alexis Cowan, and I said, I'm the most curious human that you'll ever meet.
Isn't trusting the unknown, doesn't that closely parallel loving thy enemy?
Yeah, it does, but it's also embracing the suck at the ultimate level. Like, I cannot tell you, if you talk to any of my members, how many times they've heard this from me. Like, do not recoil from something which makes you recoil. Like, learn the lesson. It's how you and I started. I told you, Robert, we need to talk about Luke. And you said to me, yeah, it was just like what happened with you and Danny. When Danny's like, oh, I want to go there. And guess what? That's exactly where Jack wants to go. Like, I'm like, a bloodhound like that. Tell me where you don't want to go, and that's where we're going.
Well, I'm totally fine. Was totally fine to go there. Obviously, we went there all fucking day.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get to the science. So
Right.
thanks for getting back to the science with me yesterday. Okay, so we have to trust in the unknown. We can never know one another. There's the Christic idea of loving thy enemy. What are these things telling? Is this trying to get people to have a common code so that we can cooperate?
I don't think people can have a common code. I think that's the real problem with civilization.
But we have to have common codes. That's what
No,
the
but
law is.
I think this is. I guess you're not going to like what I'm about to tell you. You can be a decentralized savage in a centralized world. You just have to know where the boundaries are and not try to get as close to them as you can, but do not cross the boundary, and you will live a full life. That's what I'm telling you.
I don't know that I can fully decipher that one.
Yeah, I know. But because guess what? This is the ultimate savage code. This is the mitochondriac wisdom. That I am right now in a country that's the most free in the world. It's not my country, not my home country. Every American that'll listen to this thinks that freedom is defined by the borders of the United States, and it's not. It was defined by our founding documents. Our founding documents have been watered down for 250 years by the criminals in DC. Then some young guy, 38 years old, decides, I'm going to take the ideas that were buried in the documents of the United States and I'm going to employ them to my people. These are not the same boundaries. This does not look like the United States. And then magically, everything that was true about this place 5 years ago no longer is. And you're sitting in my front yard and we're talking about this. And I'm here, and you've not asked me the question, why am I here? And I just answered it for you. I am a decentralized savage in the place that allows me to be the most free to run wild.
Isn't Bukele channeling the same Christ consciousness that George Washington channeled?
Yeah, I told you already, Bukele is George Washington on
So are we
steroids.
saying that Christ is the meta decentralized savage?
But let's do the flip side. You don't know this, I went to a Jesuit college. What really is Jesus? Jesus is a centralizing force.
How so?
He wants us to do things, his way. Those commandments and all that. And you're like, yeah.
I mean, do not steal, do not kill,
Yeah, those
love
are-
one another.
like I said, those are
how
all-
are those centralizing?
Well, they're trying to get our behavior. Like, I'll give you the perfect one. Don't eat meat on Fridays. That one never made sense to me.
Is that a commandment?
Well, no, but it's what they tell you in church.
Well, I think we have to disentangle Christ as an archetype from man's institutionalization of that archetype in
All
religion.
right, well then let's go to something that we know Christ did do. He threw the money changers out of the church. Ask yourself this question, Robert. When you walk in to the Vatican, there's fucking absolute ridiculous wealth everywhere. Discuss. Talk to me, Goose.
Well, I think you imitate Christ throwing over the tables of the money changers by saving in Bitcoin.
Yeah, but you totally skated around the point I'm trying to make. The people
I've never
that are
walked in the
running
Vatican.
the people that are running the casino in the Vatican, there's nothing Christly about them.
I'm sure you're right. I've never been.
Well,
But
trust
again,
me, I've
we're
been, and it's a disgusting place.
Well, it's disentangling though.
Oh, they're incongruent. But why are they incongruent? Because they get people to follow the bullshit laws.
But can't that be true for anything? It's also
course
true
it-
in medicine, right? People are
Of course it
completely
can.
manipulating what the truth is
Yeah, I
to
mean,
get
that's-
people to taking the
that's-
mRNA jab.
Right. That's
for
what
instance.
happened to Mary Talley Bowden. Like,
Right.
yeah, she writes a prescription for ivermectin
So
and
isn't-
the
it's not-
pharmacist doesn't fill it.
So you wouldn't say that Christ is a centralizing force. You would say that there's a human tendency towards centralization in all matters.
Humans centralized Christ message to control others.
See, I would find the message to be deeply decentralizing. It's just this very common, equitable code that we all abide by.
I think
Don't
Karl
kill, don't
Marx
steal,
was,
love one another.
I think Karl Marx was
Don't
really
respect the
accurate
money
about
changers.
religion. It's the opiate of the people. It controls them.
Well, but you know what Karl Marx was really inaccurate about was the institution of private property.
Totally.
And so if,
Remember what we talked
religion was
about?
the opiate of the masses, I've heard it said that
Don't
Marxism
throw-
was the amphetamines of the masses.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Everybody's got good ideas and everybody's got bad ideas. What I'm saying to you is, if you want to talk about Christ, you got to separate Christ from the religion. If you want to talk about Karl Marx, you got to talk about single ideas outside of the
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I think that this whole idea that we need to synchronize and cohere and collaborate requires unification under one flag, under one symbol, right? To some extent, we have to speak the same language, we have to use the same money, we have to have the same moral codes, whatever it is.
I don't know if I agree with that.
That itself is religious.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if I agree with that.
I'm having faith that you're going to honor my private property,
Yeah.
as you are having the faith in me to do the same, and that's how we sit here and get on and have this podcast peaceably.
I think when you talk about private property, it's easy. I think there's other parts where it's not. I think being a decentralized savage in a centralized world, that's a very different conversation. Why? Because you can take it right up to the nth degree. But when you make a snuff film in El Salvador, you have crossed the boundary and you deserve to be punished.
What do you mean, make a snuff film in El Salvador? What does that
Well,
mean?
that's when you're killing another person for your jollies.
Oh, you're talking about the
Yeah,
Hillary
Frazzle trip.
Clinton. Okay.
Like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
But some people would say that's a decentralized savage. Remember, the thing is, there's a lot of things that other people do that I normally wouldn't do, but do I want to put a stop to what they're doing? Like, for example,
Isn't that a line we have to collectively set then and say, no,
I don't know.
we're not going to let people
I just told
kill
you about
children.
that line with Chantal's dad. He just decided to have his chest cut open when I wouldn't do it. That's a line for me that I wouldn't do, but he crossed it and I'm okay that he crossed it.
But that's
Because it's his choice.
him and his life.
Right.
What you were talking about on this video is someone taking someone else's life against their consent.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You can be decentralized up until you do that.
Okay.
When you hit that boundary, at least in El Salvador,
Yeah.
but you could do that in the United States and get away with it. Not only that, you could lead the free world. You could be the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to
So
make.
the boundary is life, liberty, and property.
There's no freedom there. The freedom is now here.
Yeah.
Got it? Because Bukele, he is bringing the rule of law to this country. There is no rule of law.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
But we've done this before. We've had people bring
And we're going
rule
to
of
continue to
law
do it.
to the country.
We're going
and
to
then
continue to do it. We're going to make
if it's
mistakes.
not the guy that brings it, it's his heir that will corrupt it, and that's how you get into this.
Correct.
The ultimate corruption of the institution that
And
begins as something useful.
And guess what? It's a reel that keeps going. It's like a peep show in Times Square.
Yeah.
You just, every time you put a quarter in, you get a different story. It's just a different guy putting the quarter in.
What is your biggest flaw, and why do you think it is?
Biggest flaw. This is a tough one for me. Sacrificing myself when I know I shouldn't.
And you say that's a flaw as in you do that or you don't
I've been
do
doing
that?
it more so the last 3 or 4 years to keep doing the things that I'm doing right now, to fight the legal battles, to find the truth out about COVID. I've had to sacrifice my own time to go back and do it. And I have to tell you, I've been thinking about it a lot from September 30th to this December 15th. It's one of the things that's in the book this year that I'm starting to question that wisdom.
You said sacrificing yourself when you know that you shouldn't. That sounds like a lot of internal tension. Why are you sacrificing yourself and why do you think you shouldn't be?
Because of what you asked me before, Jack, what do you want to do? You want to change centralized medicine.
Yeah.
So I had to do those things to get to where we are. Now that I'm here, now I'm looking back, making a value judgment. Was it worth it? I don't know.
But
Like
you
some of the
said-
things that just recently happened, with Bobby, Trump, Nicole. You would ask me this 2 months ago, I was way more optimistic than I am now. I think I would have made that choice now, closer to December 15th, I'm questioning that wisdom.
Okay. But you said your mission is to destroy centralized medicine. And so it sounds like you've made that your highest priority in life, your mission.
Yep.
And you've made all other priorities subordinate to that.
Yep, including myself.
But now you're questioning if that was the right approach.
Yeah, because I realized, no, not that I'm questioning it's the right approach. I'm questioning my timing. Was this the best time to unload the weapon?
Okay. Oh, the timing. Back to timing.
Yeah.
Was it Buckminster Fuller said something like to focus your energies on creating the new rather than destroying the old? How does that strike you when your mission is to destroy centralized medicine?
Well, because to do it, you have to actually get the savages on the outside to realize they need to help you. I'm not, the interesting thing that you and I haven't talked about, have I employed any of the doctors inside the system to blow it up? The answer is no. I've actually used people outside the system to really blow it up. In many ways, they still don't know the cosmic wands that I'm using.
Are you blowing it up or are you creating something new? Or both?
I actually think it's creative destruction.
Okay.
I think it's Joseph Schumpeter.
Okay.
And from the entropy of the blow up, the new will begin. This is the story of the Phoenix.
Yeah. So there's a lot of lessons for us to learn from the current downfall we're seeing of centralized medicine.
No,
probably
but-
more broadly the centralized state.
Yeah, I think the COVID experience, the 4 years, I would have thought would have made more people have Windex on their glass eye than it does.
Yeah.
And those that complied, now that they're GMO humans and we know it beyond a shadow of a doubt,
Yeah.
I think what those people are going through, they don't want to have this discussion on camera. They don't want to talk about it because they're like, I can't talk about this decision. Because they
Yeah.
don't understand yet the collateral effects.
Well, that's
and
turning a blind eye to wisdom, though.
but in other words, when Becker gave me admonition, he goes, I unloaded on 60 Minutes in 77. He said, when you unload this story, just make sure.
Timing's right.
Yeah. And, I think it's a fair point for me to make. Some people will say I'm maybe judging myself a little bit too harshly because Trump hasn't taken office yet. Bobby hasn't been confirmed. Bobby's not in HHS. Jay Bhattacharya is not there.
Yeah.
ZK Knowledge Proofs. Sam Parker hasn't been unleashed in the world. Jack, how about you wait? But what am I doing right now, Robert? Reading the tea leaves. I don't wait for reality to manifest.
So what was your trigger event to start this release of information that you were so sensitive to the timing of?
My trigger was, this is the biggest story never told in centralized medicine. How?
But you were sitting on it for a long, long, long time.
30 years.
So what was the trigger? What was the, now I need to tell it?
If you want to know the truth, the trigger was Rick Rubin
Rick Rubin.
calling me and saying, hey, I want you to talk to Andrew Huberman about light. And I knew implicitly what that is. I told you on this trip
Yeah.
that it took me 6 weeks to answer Rick.
Yeah.
And did I really answer Rick? No, you heard the answer. Actually, Chantel answered.
Yeah.
Chantel said, now's the time.
So once light was permeating into the mainstream consciousness, you knew it was your time to strike.
Well, I also did Bukele put some more fairy dust into this?
Yeah.
He asked me to write a constitutional amendment as a corollary to this. And then he has something here in February called the Age of Light. If you don't think I thought that was quantum entanglement, to me that was a bigger sign from nature than 60 Minutes was for Becker in 77. I mean, back then nobody had a cell phone, nobody had a microwave.
Yeah.
Now today, take a look around us right now.
Yeah. We're all in the microwave now.
Right.
If you were given a chance to truly know one answer to one question about your future, what would that be?
I'd like to know what the future of biochemistry books will look like. Will they have the lightsabers and the story of water in the book, or will they continue to be subtracted out so that the powers of big pharma can continue to shed their stories of bullshit to the masses?
So, whether or not the decentralized revolution succeeds,
Yes.
and what does success look like for that revolution?
Success looks like there's more decentralized savages in the world than there are right now.
Well, then we're succeeding every day.
You know what the problem is? Savages are relative too.
Yeah.
Right now, we have maybe 70 to 100,000. I'd like to see 8 billion. And I'd like to see the people that are the centralized savages, the Rockefellers, the Harrimans, the Rothschilds, the people in Washington, D.C., the people in the think tanks, the NGOs, the Bill Gates. I want to see them in a Vitamix. I want them to become random. I want their atoms spread all over nature so that we can make decentralized savages from them. I want to recycle the entropy.
How do we prevent degeneration backward in the future? If we get 8 billion decentralized savages, how do we prevent them from erecting their own towers of centralization?
Easiest question you've asked me, Bitcoin. Thermodynamics determine the flow. As soon as Bitcoin gets in, it changes everything. That one's easy. Now, it's easy for me and you, but the people in the audience that maybe not as facile about this, they're not going to realize that all molecular equations, all equations in life follow thermodynamics. So if we make something thermodynamically easier, it happens. If we ask something to go against a waterfall, it doesn't happen. It's the whole idea of the cracked egg becoming a whole egg. Bitcoin actually stops us from going and back and making the same mistakes over and over again. Remember what Einstein said about insanity?
Yeah. Attempting the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
That's actually what
That's what fiat currency is, right?
well, that's exactly what centralized government in the United States was, and Woodrow Wilson ossified it with his decision in his presidency, which is why he's the worst of the worst in my world. We can never have a president like him again.
Decentralized savages. So this is, I mean, why that term and not Bitcoiners? It sounds like that is, they're
Because
one.
Bitcoiners is not good enough. Most Bitcoiners are not decentralized in their health yet. I already told you that answer, but you haven't been paying attention to me good enough.
No, I'm paying attention.
I went to Prague for that reason.
Revisiting the topic though.
I want to really get in Bitcoiners' head to let them know I want them to be rich. I want them to be free. I want them to be sovereign, but I want them to be free of centralized medicine.
Okay. And so it's Bitcoiner plus decentralized medicine equals decentralized savage.
I would tell you it's the caduceus for Bitcoiners is health and wealth around the staff. They're linked. That's really the message.
What about self-defense?
What about it?
Seems pretty important to be a decentralized savage.
If you're in the wrong place right now, I think it's really important in the United States. But that's why Thomas Jefferson put it in the Constitution.
Right.
Is the Second Amendment really as important in El Salvador? No. In fact, the funny thing is they just came out, well, I'm going to tell you the reason why. Again, everything is relative. You have to understand why we have the Second Amendment in the United States, because of what happened with the king, and we had to defend ourselves. Well, in El Salvador, they went through 2 civil wars, and it turned out when both sides had guns, that who'd they kill? The people. Wasn't a good situation. Do I believe that El Salvador down the road, once Bitcoin has changed things? Remember what the difference with Bitcoin is here, Robert? And then I think you'll understand my point. If we had Bitcoin during the Federalist Papers and that was incorporated into our Constitution, I don't think that Thomas Jefferson would put the Second Amendment where it is. It may still be on our Constitution, but it may be somewhere lower because he was always worried about the bankers. And because the bankers are the bad guys, you need a Second Amendment. Here in El Salvador, Bitcoin has been made legal tender. It's the only place in the world that can say that. So if you believe what Max Kaiser has said, that Bitcoin changes everything else, you're not changing Bitcoin, then given enough time, you may not need a Second Amendment here.
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea. I think you always need
I'm not-
symmetry of power projection capability to
still
keep
not-
people honest.
Still not disagreeing with you, but what I'm asking you to think about is understand the differences between Bukele and the U.S. situation.
Yeah.
And again, this is the theory of relativity. This is time relativity. It's a different place. Now, do I agree with you? Yeah, I would love to see them have a constitutional amendment for self-defense. But do I think that he's got bigger fish to fry right now? Yeah, I think he does. But the fact that he gave people freedom and money, I think that the rest of the world doesn't realize. Like, President Bukele makes the biggest mistake. Let me be critical of him. He makes the biggest mistake when he goes on CNBC or Tucker Carlson and says, yeah, we're not happy that, Bitcoin adoption hasn't been as fast as it needs to be. I'm like, well, Bitcoin adoption in this country is 100%. You have it legal tender. I mean, look what happened to the bonds on Wall Street. Every person in this country now owns Bitcoin. Their property values are raised. The problem is when you don't play in the Bitcoin sandbox and you're a Salvadorian, yeah, you don't realize what's going on. But this effect is actually what Cynthia Lummis said at Bitcoin Nashville. It's the effect of the Louisiana Purchase. Nobody in America, went out and championed Thomas Jefferson when he broke the Constitution and bought the Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase was actually an unconstitutional act by the laws that he wrote. But guess what? It was such a good deal that he said, we're going to make it. And it turned out it changed all of our fortunes.
Right.
The most valuable aspect of the United States is actually that Mississippi River because it brought the oceans into the middle of the continent.
Right.
It was an amazing thing. And then what did we do? We recapitulated that story with Alaska. We did it again. We got that fortunate.
Yeah.
So what I would say to you is the relativism of timing, politics.
Rule making, rule breaking.
Right. I think as long as you stay decentralized, this is the reason why I like to say that the American spirit is actually in El Salvador now. It's not confined to our borders.
Sure.
And you and I are sitting in my front yard, and we are two decentralized savages parsing this out.
I'm honored.
Well, we're parsing this out. We're thinking about,
I thought living in Miami disqualified me from being a decentralized savage.
well, I would probably tell you that from a certain level, but at the same time, you have to realize that I understand the mindset, the spirit animal that's inside of you. You're much more similar to I am than you are to Cali Means. Therefore, you're in my house and I invite you here. I would never invite Cali or Casey Means into my house right now because I don't believe them.
Right.
In other words, on that probability scale,
Yeah.
I think it's more probable than not that they are global elitists, and this is the reason why they hang out with the Wojcicki sisters
Right.
and
Right.
the Sergey Brins of the world.
So this is a good framing that humans are the animals that make rules and then break rules over and over and over and over. And
Do you remember what I said to you about my circle of six? That I have a revolving door?
Right.
Now you know why.
Yeah, and it's a process of circumambulation towards better, fairer rules, I guess. And now we've stumbled onto Bitcoin finally. Like we finally discovered the ideal rule set that no one can break, presumably. No one can change.
Right. That's what we
And so
assume
that's-
right now. We don't know that to be
Sure.
factual, but guess what? The probability, the thermodynamics of the equation,
Yeah.
which you beautifully laid out with Saylor in that big series, it seems that this is the best way for us to land the plane.
So if wisdom is the crystallization of this long process of natural evolution and selection, And we are at somewhere at the top of that process as well, right? We are the most highly evolved organism in terms of human rationality, at least. And we've created Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin wisdom?
I think Bitcoin can be wisdom depending on how we use it. Do I think Bitcoin is like nature? For example, we know that nature is wisdom, but not all of us use it.
Yeah, right.
So I think
Bitcoin is nature.
that's very accurate, and I think the decentralized savages will use it in more novel ways than the centralized creatures will.
Just like they use the regularity of the rising and setting sun.
Right.
They use the
We have
regularity of
dermatologists
10-minute
that
blocks.
try to tell people that UV light's bad.
Yeah.
And we have people that will tell you that, yeah, you don't have to spend $30 on deuterium depleted water when you have cancer.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather you spend $20,000 on some bullshit chemotherapy from Pfizer. That's the point. And I think these discussions, these are the kind of discussions that should happen at the dinner table. But guess what? We're not a nuclear family country anymore. Why? Because our centralized controllers in Washington, D.C. took that away from us too. They made us believe that it's better to break the family unit up. I have a problem with that too. I see it as one of the biggest failures in my own family. And I'm talking about my mom, my dad, my sister. Do I think that my life could have been very different if those forces, and believe it or not, those were monetary forces. Again, this is a Bitcoin story.
Sure.
And do I understand there's people out there right now that are people like where the mom is working 3 jobs, dad's working 2 jobs, because they're trying to have the American dream. Well, the American dream has been taken away from them because the bankers have devalued the money for 120 years. So, you know, they're still trying to hold the fort together when I think I want them to know they can get on a American Airlines plane and come down here for 4 or 5 weeks and see that the American dream, this is, feel the wind that's coming through. I hope everybody can feel this. On that wind, the message is coming from the United States that freedom maximalism is not contained by the borders of any centralized entity. It can blow anywhere, and all decentralized savages need to do is put their nose and their hair to the wind and smell.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to bring it to a close. Dr. Jack Kruse, thank you for 3 days of your wisdom.
No problem. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming down and checking out Paradise.
Anytime.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.